Years of strategy and struggle against the prison industrial complex. It's a collection of essays. This one is by David Gilbert on page 31, titled "The System Within the System, the Prison Industrial Complex and Imperialism." For those of us held behind locked gates within the walls and fences topped with razor wire, the corrections regime is the system that works tirelessly to impose total control over every aspect of our lives. Yet as ponderous and powerful as prisons are, they're only one part, a central girder, of a much bigger and more foreboding house of horrors, which can most accurately be named imperialism. The structural needs of the larger edifice set the specifications for the size and position of the girder. The strength of the girder helps determine how long the building itself will stand. We can't understand the explosion of imprisonment in the United States since 1971 without looking at an imperialism's urgent needs and goals of that period. By the same token, we can't develop an effective program around the prison industrial complex without grappling with the stresses and trends of the larger system of imperial rule. To be clear, before you take time to read this chapter, I don't offer any brilliant ideas on strategy. Those will most likely emerge from the organizing and activist efforts themselves. However, some of the concerns discussed may raise questions that go into forming strategy. I definitely look forward to learning from the dialogues that this generates on these issues. Imperialism may sound like the kind of rhetoric we want to avoid, but it's one word that needs to be rescued as the best way to name the system that rules over us. The basis of imperialism is the relentless quest for profits around the globe. Its most striking characteristic is the colossal and grotesque polarization of wealth. That polarization happens between nations, between the rich countries of the North and the impoverished ones of the global South, the impoverished countries of Africa, Latin America, and parts of Asia, and at the same time within each country based on class, race, and gender. The poles of dazzling wealth and abject poverty are intimately linked, as the former results from the ruthless plunder of the latter. This system is built on and intensifies all the major forms of oppression: patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy, all of which are structurally central. At the same time, imperialism highlights the global character of the system in a way that explains why the most intense oppression and resistance have been in the South, and that also provides the context for why the liberation struggles of the various people of color have been in the forefront within the U.S. There's no way to capture what the system costs in human life and potential, the pain and loss for all of us. Close to 1 billion human beings suffer chronic hunger, while another 2 billion face nutritional deficiencies. 1 billion lack access to clean drinking water. Just looking at children under the age of 5, imperialism is a holocaust in progress. Over 9 million die every year from easily preventable causes associated with poverty. The price for future generations may be even more severe as the rapaciousness of this global frenzy for profits threatens the very ecological basis for sustaining human life on any scale on our planet. Since most people won't accept living in squalor amid plenty, imperialism entails both the most sophisticated and the most brutal forms of social control. Its most salient feature is war after war after war, mainly against the peoples of the South. The domestic front line of such repression is a truly violent and harmful prison industrial complex. Today, 2,300,000 people are held behind bars, about 7 times the number in 1971. That explosion was unprecedented, coming after a 70-year period when the rates of imprisonment had remained more or less constant. This dramatic change did not result from some sudden skyrocketing of criminal activity, but rather from a radical expansion of what was designated as a crime and a draconian increase in the punishments for those crimes. Such extreme measures were driven by considerations way beyond criminal justice and often at cross purposes to the proclaimed goal of public safety. These destructive changes were born from crisis, one much more severe and protracted than the periodic ups and downs of the business cycles that occur over a roughly 10-year period, but rather a situation that threatened the very survival of the system. Such structural crises occur because capitalism is by its nature unstable. The economy is vast and complicated, but the major decisions are made by a tiny corporate and financial elite, with each thinking only of his own profits. When a structural crisis develops, the long-term institutional arrangements that assured a reliable flow of profits and the rule of capital no longer function. One dramatic example was the Great Depression of the 1930s, followed by World War II. At the end of that period, a new set of international institutions, such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, were created. At the same time, a new deal was hammered out for the terms of the bargain between capital and labor within the U.S. Those arrangements worked well for capital until they broke down a generation later. That new structural crisis, which emerged between 1968 and 73, is the seedbed for the burgeoning of the prison-industrial complex and many related changes in U.S. history. The first and most obvious signs were political, as the resistance to imperialism crested in 1968. Abolition Now. The book, Jailbreak Out of History by Butch Lee.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, happy Monday. Thom Hartmann here with you, and my book tour is done. I was in Chicago over the weekend. Just an amazing little story here. And maybe it's a little off color. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's a sign, though, that people are taking this seriously. Normally, when the airport's really, really busy, I went through really busy airports, and when the airports are really, really busy, and you need to use the bathroom in the men's room, typically, if it's in the morning, there's a long line for people who want to use the stalls, and if it's any other time of the day, there's a long line for people who want to use the urinals. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, for the first time in my life, I've walked into a men's room in an airport and seen a long line, people lined up waiting to use the sinks to wash their hands. And so people are taking this stuff seriously. We've got this coronavirus outbreak that apparently is spreading around several states right now. Washington State, we've got cases here in Oregon. We've got the first community spread case was announced in Chicago yesterday, and it's happening. So, I'm going to get back to that. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about our government's response to it and some stuff that's coming up with the Supreme Court and all kinds of things. But first, day before yesterday, Saturday, was the South Carolina primary. Joe Biden knocked that out of the park, over 50%, 51%, I believe he got. And tomorrow is Super Tuesday. Tomorrow is the big day. Tomorrow, well over 1,000 of the roughly 4,000 delegates that we're going to have will be chosen. And so what I wanted to do here, just to start the program off, and we'll just do it for 10 minutes or so and see how it goes, is let's do a poll, right? Just a quick poll. Who would you vote for if, because I realize, some of you don't live in Super Tuesday states, and so you can't vote. But the simple question, our telephone number is 202-808-9925. I will call out the first three digits of your phone number, your area code. We got caller ID here. And you'll hear a whoosh when you get put on the air. Joyce is not going to screen the calls. She's not going to answer the calls. So give us a shout right now and just tell us who you would vote for if you were voting on Super Tuesday, and in one sentence, why, right? That's it. Just, I would vote for Joe Blow because, or bad choice of names because there is a Joe, but you get it. I'd vote for Joe Blow because I think, I love his health care plan or whatever it would be. So who are you going to vote for and why? David, actually, I have some of your names because you've called before, but 360 area code. Who would you vote for and why?
Bernie Sanders, because of Medicare for all, and his honesty and fairness in politics.
Okay. Area code 951, who would you vote for?
I would vote for Bernie Sanders because he can beat Donald Trump.
Okay. Area code 503, who would you vote for?
Bernie Sanders.
Okay. Area code 520, who would you vote for?
I'd vote for Bernie Sanders because of Medicare for All. Actually, I've early voted, and also he wants to bring back Glass-Steagall. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, you're welcome. Area code 651, who would you vote for?
Elizabeth Warren. She has a plan for everything.
Okay, great. Area code 708, who would you vote for?
Senator Warren, because in a general election, I believe she's the most electable Democrat.
Okay. Area code 408, who would you vote for?
Elizabeth Warren.
Okay. You want to give a reason?
Yes, because of the legislation that she's put through to protect consumers against banks, and also because she is for universal health care.
Okay, great. Thank you. Area code 503, who would you vote for?
Bernie Sanders, because he has nothing left to prove.
Okay. Area code 847, who would you vote for?
I would vote for Bernie Sanders because of Medicare for All.
Okay. Area code 828, who would you vote for?
Bernie Sanders.
Okay. Area code 313, who would you vote for?
I'm voting for Bernie in Michigan on March 10th because he's not pay to play.
Okay. Area code 206, who would you vote for?
Yes, I would vote for Joe Biden because he can bring the Senate and keep the House.
Okay, thank you. Area code 206, who would you vote for?
Bernie Sanders. He's consistent. I want Medicare for all, and he's an honest man.
Okay. Area code 724, who would you vote for and why?
I'd vote for Joe Biden. I'd like to have things back the way they were, and like to have people appointed back to their positions and vetted.
Okay, thank you. Area code 505, who would you vote for?
Bernie Sanders, Medicare for All, Glass-Steagall.
Thank you. Area code 860, who would you vote for?
I'd vote for Bernie, and it's because of his Medicaid program.
Okay, thank you. Area code 314, who would you vote for?
Bernie Sanders because Medicare for All.
Okay. Area code 206, who would you vote for?
Bernie because of health care, education, and child care.
Okay. Area code 847, who would you vote for?
Elizabeth Warren.
And why?
I like her wealth tax and her Medicare plan, and I just think she's got a great plan for everything.
Okay. Area code 248, who would you be voting for and why?
Bernie Sanders because of Medicare for All.
Okay. Area code 360, who would you be voting for and why?
Elizabeth Warren, consumer protection, and because she would debate the living bejesus out of that thing in the White House.
Okay, well said. Area code 708, who would you vote for?
Elizabeth Warren. She's got a plan for everything. She's brilliant.
Thank you. Area code 651, who would you vote for?
Minnesota, and I'm voting for Bernie on Tuesday because of Medicare for All. We had 2 young men in their 20s die here because they were rationing their insulin, and we can't have young men rationing their insulin because they don't have health insurance.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Area code 615, who would you vote for?
Joe Biden. I think he can beat Trump.
Okay, thank you. Area code 312, who would you vote for?
I would vote for Bernie Sanders because he can energize the base.
Okay. Area code 206, who would you be voting for?
Bernie Sanders for his immigration plan to abolish ICE and make DACA recipients legal.
Okay. And area code 360, who would you vote for? And why?
Bernie Sanders, he's a wise elder. We know exactly what we're getting.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna pause that now, and I'll put my Joyce will start answering calls, and we'll take your calls on your thoughts on how the elections are going and who you're in favor of. I do want to talk about why this whole coronavirus thing, why we really do need health care for all, and what the Supreme Court is up to. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We live in interesting times, as they say. It's 13 minutes past the hour. I'll give you the count in 4 minutes here. Stick around. And welcome back. My daughter sent me a funny that was on the internet. One of the 3 big clusters apparently of coronavirus are in Italy and China and South Korea. And it was an article about how Donald Trump has declared no more Italian food, right? And no more pizza, right? Well, let's look at Mr. Mike Pence. This is Judd Legum laid this out over at Popular Information. And I think it's absolutely fascinating. He points out that first Donald Trump fired Rear Admiral Tim Zimer. Now, Tim Zimer was the director of global health security on the National Security Council. And in that position, he was responsible for coordinating responses to global health emergencies and potential pandemics. He was praised as one of the most quietly effective leaders in public health. He worked on malaria during the Obama administration and literally is credited with saving millions of lives. But instead of replacing him, I mean, he wasn't, he wasn't actually political. He was a rear admiral. But instead of replacing him, Trump just eliminated the position. No more director of global health security at the National Security Council, period. Gone. And then Dr. Luciana Borio, the National Security Council Director for Medical and Biodefense Preparedness, left the same month, was not replaced. And so now we've got this, worldwide spread of this coronavirus. And as this outbreak is growing more severe, Trump didn't want to bring somebody new in because, well, that would look like a failure. If we have to bring in somebody from the outside, this was the whole argument. So he put Mike Pence in charge. Now, Anthony Fauci, who is the director of the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and has been doing this kind of stuff for decades, and really gets it. He was ordered by Pence to not. He was booked for all 5 of the Sunday shows, right? And instead, Pence took his place and said, no, we're not going to have scientists talking. Nobody talks unless I approve it. Mike Pence has to approve it. And so they played this clip. This was on CNN's State of the Union of Donald Trump Jr. on Fox News saying Democrats want millions of people to die so they can blame it on Trump. And Brian Kilmeade said, are you surprised the way they've been handling the coronavirus situation, meaning Democrats? Trump Jr., not at all. I mean, we've seen, like you said, we've seen this play out for 4 years. Anything they can use to try to hurt Trump, they will. But for them to try to take a pandemic and seemingly hope that it comes here and kills millions of people so they could end Donald Trump's streak of winning is a new level of sickness. Jake Tapper then asks Mike Pence, can we agree that neither Democrats nor Republicans want Americans to get the coronavirus and die from it? And Pence wouldn't say, yes, we can agree on that. I mean, this is how bizarre it is. He says, Don Jr.'s comments are understandable because there's been very strong rhetoric directed at the president. And so Chuck Todd asks Mike Pence, name some names of irresponsible Democrats who are promoting this rhetoric. And the only thing Pence could come up with was a column in the New York Times in which Gail Collins, who's simply a column writer, said, let's call it the Trump virus. Right. This is nuts. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Let me toss another question out to you, by the way. Here's the results that we have. Bernie 18, Biden 3, Warren 6. So that's interesting. About a third of the vote went to Warren. I shouldn't try to do math in my head like that. 18 for Bernie, 6 for Warren, 3 for Biden in our little 10-minute snap poll, just to see how people are thinking. Not surprising, but and given the progressive tilt of the show. So I was on Stephanie Miller's show about a half hour ago, maybe 45 minutes ago, and she has regularly on her show Malcolm Nance, who I tweeted to over the weekend. He had this tweet about how if Bernie is the nominee, then we're going to lose the House, we're going to lose the Senate, we're going to lose the White House, Trump wins, it's the end of the world. And I basically said, take a breath, Malcolm. Bernie is not proposing any legislative efforts, any legislation that has not already in the past been proposed by either President Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Jack Kennedy, or Lyndon Johnson. All of them have proposed free college. All of them, in fact, we had free college in California, and close to free everywhere else in the country, right up until the Reagan presidency, and the Reagan governorship. He ended free college. So anyhow, he's taking that position that if Bernie's the nominee, we're all doomed. I have said, and I believe I can build the case for this, but I don't have the level of certainty that apparently Malcolm does, that I think that if Joe Biden is the nominee, that he's probably one of our weakest nominees in terms of taking on Trump. But I could be totally wrong about this. I base that on the lack of broad grassroots support, although, South Carolina, that was a pretty good showing. In fact, that was a damn good showing. And so my question to you is, who do you think is going to be our strongest candidate, our strongest nominee? Now, Pete Buttigieg has dropped out. In all probability, he's going to endorse Joe Biden. And, we'll see what that does. We'll see, how that moves. I mean, basically what's happening is, things are kind of aligning. And frankly, what direction do you want to see America go? What do you think should be the priorities for this country? I would say, if nothing else, what this coronavirus is showing to us. I mean, this is a story from the New York Times yesterday, and it's about a fellow. He and his daughter were evacuated out of Wuhan, China, brought back to the United States. They tested negative. They don't have the virus. His wife actually did have the virus, and she's a Chinese national, and she stayed in China. She's in the hospital there. But he and his daughter came back to the United States, and they were required to stay in an isolation unit at a children's hospital in San Diego because they were flown into the Marine Corps there. They were required. Our government said, you must do this, even though he tested negative. And when he gets home, he's got a bill for $3,918 in the mail. And more coming. That was just the doctors, the radiologists, and the ambulance. He doesn't yet have the hospital bill. And he's like, why am I getting this bill? It wasn't my choice to go to the hospital. I mean, this is how broken our system is. And then you look at how dysfunctional this administration is. This quarantine plan that was hastily hatched by the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, they were going to send people with coronavirus. One of the places that the Trump administration, with Mike Pence in charge, was going to send people who are being quarantined because they have coronavirus, was to an old Army base and an empty hospital in Anniston, Alabama. It's a little town of 22,000 people in north central Alabama. This is a FEMA facility. It's, as I said, an old Army base. It's called the Center for Domestic Preparedness. And there are several, I'm reading from the Washington Post here. This is the title of the article, Coronavirus Rumors and Chaos in Alabama Point to Big Problems as U.S. Seeks to Contain Virus, by Todd C. Frankel. And, housing coronavirus patients at the Center for Domestic Preparedness, a FEMA facility. The center has several brick dormitory buildings, tall black fencing, where federal officials plan to put for the patients to live. In fact, federal officials even picked out the building they wanted to use for their first arrivals, dorm number 28. Now, why dorm number 28? Because it's used for training. It has isolation hospital rooms. But here's the thing. I just, when I read this, I had to read it twice to see if I was actually, am I imagining this? The center is used for training. It has isolation hospital rooms located in a former Army hospital building, but they are mostly just props with fake equipment and light switches that exist only as paint on walls. They use it for training. It's not a real hospital. The light switches are painted on the walls. They don't even have real light switches. They don't have real equipment. It's props. And this is where they were going to put people with coronavirus until Richard Shelby, the senator, got on Air Force One and had a conversation with Donald Trump and said, "Don't send people to Anniston." And it wasn't because he knew that the place was just a training center with props. It was because he didn't want people with coronavirus in Alabama. Meanwhile, again, back to this piece in the Washington Post. Meanwhile, federal officials never contacted the town's hospital, regional medical center, about handling COVID-19 patients, said Louis Bass, the hospital's chief executive. HHS released a statement saying that, overflow or really sick people, we'll send them to this local hospital. The guy who runs the hospital, he says, we were surprised. They have 8 rooms, isolation rooms in this hospital that can deal with this. And this is a serious problem, I think, for the United States as this spreads. Because we have, these are just numbers that I got from watching CNN on Sunday morning, but I have every reason to believe that they're more or less accurate. That basically in the United States we have about 1 million hospital beds, and we have 150,000 respirators across the country. And we have typically about 85% usage of those, which means that there's 150,000 empty hospital beds, and there's, if I'm doing my math right, around 22,000 available respirators. Now, now some of the numbers that are being put out is, between 40 and 70% of people might get this. It's like the common cold. And for the vast majority of people, well over 80% of people, it's just a mild thing like the cold. But for that 2 or 3 or 4% who get, I guess it's around 4 to 5% who get sick enough that they require hospitalization and ventilation, and then 2% who die. But 4% of 40% of our population is going to overwhelm our hospital capacity. China is literally building a new hospital every 3 or 4 days. And what is this administration doing? I don't know. I'm not getting anything here, and it concerns me that, and I don't mean to sound hysterical, but we need we need this administration to succeed at this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And by the way, now they're saying, hey, get a couple of weeks worth of food in case you have to self-quarantine, something I was suggesting 2 weeks ago. We'll be back, pick up your calls. Well, happy Monday. Another opportunity to help Free Speech TV stay on the air, keep this program here, keep this whole network going by calling 1-877-378-8669. Free Speech TV really does need your help. Of course, there's a lot of things you can do. You can tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. We get more people watching. We can get more people donating. We can shorten these fund drives. So that's an important thing you can do. And I've been on the road here with this book tour. And one of the things that has really impressed me is how many people come up to me and say, hey, I just started watching you on Free Speech TV in the last X months because my friend so-and-so told me to. And it's really cool. We need more of that. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, talk about us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, Instagram, whatever it may be. Because Free Speech TV is listener-supported, viewer-supported. It's you, literally, who keep this network on the air. And, your $5 a month, $10 a month contributions, your commitments to a small monthly amount on a regular basis is the most important thing you can do to help Free Speech TV. And frankly, in my opinion, helping Free Speech TV is one of the most important things that you can do to help, resuscitate American politics. Frankly, I don't know how to say it other than that, just to resuscitate American politics. We have a political disaster going on in our country right now with this fellow in the White House, and the damage that's being done to the administration of justice, but also to basically all of the systems of governance. I mean, the Interior Department is gutted, the EPA is gutted, the 2 offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of or the National Security Council that were responsible for taking care of us if there is a a pandemic or epidemic disease were both shut down 2 years ago by Donald Trump. There's nobody in either of those positions. He puts Mike Pence, the guy who thinks the world is 6,000 years old, cancer doesn't cause smoking, and you can pray away the guy who doesn't believe in science, puts him in charge of our response to the coronavirus. And he was on the Sunday shows, and nobody even asked him about how, his religious motivated, no, we're not going to do anything to help with the AIDS epidemic in Indiana back in 2000, actually caused Indiana to go from 20 cases to 200 cases of HIV. It's crazy. We need people who can actually, America needs a network that actually talks about what's going on. And that's what this is right here, Free Speech TV. And you can help. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, proud student of Thom Hartmann University. Or the, just get out and vote the car magnet. It's like a bumper sticker to get out the vote. It says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, you get the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month for a year, you get my new book, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, which should have been the Republican War on Voting because there's no Democratic War on Voting. With a $240 gift, we have a virtual meet and greet. No viruses. Seriously, you don't have to leave your home. We will meet on the interwebs. We'll meet on the internet and have a conversation. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. That's Free Speech TV host postcards to send to friends and family. The car magnet to get out the vote. The Just Effing Vote tote bag. And my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all 3 Hidden History books autographed by the author. That's me. The Hidden History of the Guns in the Second Amendment, the Hidden History of the Supreme Court and its Betrayal of America. And by the way, they're fixing to do even more. Well, we'll talk about that on the air. And number 3, the Hidden History of the War on Voting. And with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland, Oregon, and hang out with us, as long as you're not coughing, and we'll have a good time, and we'll go next door and have a nice meal. So those are the premiums, the Free Speech TV premiums. But the really important thing is the importance of having a television network that tells the truth, where you get, the Walter Cronkite of this generation, Amy Goodman, here on Free Speech TV. You get an extraordinary comedian and political commentary, Stephanie Miller, who really understands politics. I mean, her dad ran for vice president with Barry Goldwater back in 1964. She knows what she's talking about. You get this program, which I hope is of value to you. David Pakman, Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network that we just have to keep it going. I mean, there's no other way to say it. We have to keep this network going. And that happens when you call 877-378-8669 or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution online. It's pretty important stuff. I can't overstate how important it is. I don't think that, I'm not an official historian, but I'm a pretty good student of history. And I honestly believe we've never seen anything like this before. We've got to call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Coming up this week on The Science Revolution, is the coronavirus about to show us the cost of not having Medicare for all? Former health insurance executive Wendell Potter, public health professor at George Washington University Medical School Dr. Lena Wen, and author of The Coming Plague, Laurie Garrett, all join me for the most up-to-date information on the now pandemic coronavirus. Don't miss it, and check it out wherever fine podcasts are available. So, a couple of questions here. What are you doing to prepare for the possibility of a coronavirus outbreak in your community? Louise went out Saturday to the local Target store and they were completely sold out of hand sanitizer and isopropyl alcohol. You can kind of make your own hand sanitizer, with isopropyl alcohol and paper towels, or mix it with aloe vera gel or something like that. You can kind of do it yourself, but the raw ingredients were sold out. It's starting to happen. I told you, we got a couple of weeks worth of food, just stuff that we'd normally eat. A lot of canned beans and chili and stuff like that. So, how do you prepare? What are you doing? And not panic. It's not panic. Wash your hands a lot. It seems, from everything I've been hearing from these various scientists and a couple of healthcare professionals in my own family, who are saying, the most important thing is to wash your hands all the time and not touch your face. The average person touches their face 20 times an hour. And if you can break that habit and not touch, because, you can get the virus on your hands, and it doesn't mean that you've got the virus. It's when you touch your face and it gets into your eyes or your mouth or your nose, the mucous membranes and things, that, boom, then it gets inside your body. So it's just a matter of, regularly washing your hands. And, good step. But if anything, I think that what this coronavirus is doing is it's telling us how important it is that we have a national healthcare system. And interestingly, the Supreme Court announced this morning that they will hear, we had previously been led to believe that this case that they have now said they're going to hear this fall, that they weren't going to hear it until next spring, where you've got 20 some odd, it's 21, 20, something like that, Republican-controlled states, Texas is leading the bunch, whose governors are suing to end Obamacare, which will throw millions of people off Medicaid, because it'll end the Obamacare Medicaid expansion, will allow health insurance companies to start denying you access to health care if you have pre-existing conditions, which is between a third and half of all Americans, depending on how you define a pre-existing condition. And the insurance companies are pretty slick at this. And it's just like, let's move backwards. If ever there was an example, and I think that this may affect the election. We'll see. And then restaurants. We've talked about that. I've debated conservatives on this, in the past, of how do you, and this was just around cold and flu season, right? How do you justify not offering people who are in positions where they can communicate a disease, like people who work in restaurants? How do you justify not giving those people paid sick leave? I mean, do you really want the server who's bringing your plate to your table, or the cook who's preparing it, or to be sick, particularly when there's this is a disease that is potentially very, very, very dangerous. So anyhow, I see all that happening. Chuck Schumer just issued an announcement. He said the Supreme Court's decision to hear the case. This is the we want to end Obamacare. Case that the Republicans have brought. He says the Supreme Court's decision to hear the case is a stark reminder of President Trump's determination to end those protections, because any Democratic president would immediately drop this heartless Republican lawsuit. Congressional Republicans and President Trump support the lawsuit to take health care away and haven't lifted a finger to stop it. I mean, they could pull the lawsuit. They could say, we're not going to argue this. We already have Obamacare. We're going to stay with it. But no, that ain't happening. So, anyhow, Johnny in Galveston, Texas. Hey, Johnny, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Recently, this past week, Nancy Pelosi, in her press conference to reporters, she said two things I found really disturbing.
I'm listening.
Okay. The first thing she said was, meaning the party, the DNC, we've decided to win. I'm referring to this race, the 2020 race.
What's disturbing about that?
Yeah, the first question that comes to my mind is, wait a minute, you've decided to win this time. What does that mean? You've decided to lose to the Republicans on all the other races recently?
She's just playing cheerleader here, and it's a good thing that she is. We're going all in. And I think the subtext of that is we're going to set aside the infighting and the battle, the battles, among candidates, and vote blue no matter who. I mean, I believe that was the essence of her comment, Johnny.
Well, that leads to my second thing. She said unity, 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 right. Referring to, like you just said, vote blue no matter who.
Right.
But here's my subtext to that. When she says vote blue no matter who, or unity, 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 what she's really doing is she's giving herself and the DNC permission to continue to engage in all kinds of unethical tactics in order to dislodge a progressive candidate like either Warren or especially Bernie Sanders, so that when...
I don't see that happening, Johnny.
Say again?
I don't see that happening.
You don't see that happening?
No.
You don't think they're flooding the field with 2 extra candidates, that they changed the rules midstream? You don't see that as a problem?
Yeah, Bloomberg, I mean, they did, actually, the DNC did change the rules so that Bloomberg could participate in the debate. And I thought that was a mistake. But on the other hand, the upside of that was that, Bloomberg, I mean, if I was Tom Perez and I'm looking at this situation, and here's Bloomberg, who has poured $500 million into the election, I would be thinking to myself, for the good of the party, for the good of the nation, Americans should see how this guy does on the debate stage before they choose him to go up against Donald Trump. And so, yeah, the DNC changed the rules because the rules before were you had to raise a certain amount of money and you had to have a certain hit in the polls. Bloomberg was hitting those numbers in the polls, but he hadn't raised any money because he's funding it himself. So they changed the rules to allow that. And I think that was a good thing because we all got to see that Bloomberg is probably not the guy who's going to beat Donald Trump. I mean, he just performed terribly in both the debates. We'll see if he can pull a rabbit out of the hat, if he gets better at this, something like that. But I didn't see that as, let's take down Bernie. I saw that as this guy just put $500 million into the race, and the American people need to know who he is and hear what he has to say. I mean, doesn't that make sense, Johnny?
Well, you just said pull a rabbit out of the hat, and he just pulled a rabbit out of the hat. Yesterday afternoon, I heard a 1 minute or 1.5 minute or 2 minute ad of his where he's photographed in what looks like an Oval Office type setting, and he's actually sounding reasonable in the way he's proposing to deal with these issues related to what Trump is failing to do.
He being Bloomberg.
So that could be the rabbit.
Well, if Bloomberg is the nominee, I don't think he'll make a terrible president. I just don't think that he's the guy who can most easily beat Donald Trump. But I could be entirely wrong on that too. I mean, it's like, we've gotten a whole series of surprises here over the last decade in our elections, I don't.
Here's my problem.
I am not
Tom.
freaked out about this, Johnny. That's the bottom line. I am not freaked out about this.
Well, the reason why I'm freaked out is because we had 2 of the 7 candidates. We had 2 fantastic candidates, Warren and Bernie Sanders. And instead of going with what they're saying and taking to heart what they're saying and knowing that they're not going to burn down the party or the country, they insist on changing the rules so that 2 billionaires can enter the race. It's like you're having a marathon, and all of a sudden these guys get out of the van.
Well, Steyer got in with the exact same rules that everybody else did. It was Bloomberg that they changed the rules for because Steyer had actually been raising money, so he had the fundraising stuff plus the polls. Bloomberg didn't. But I get what you're saying, Johnny. We'll just have to see how it all plays out. Thanks for the call, Gene in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Gene, what's on your mind today? Gene? I am not hearing Gene, so I'll put Gene on hold here. I actually, the Dow, by the way, is back up again right now. And I think that the next thing that we're going to see, the next big issue, the next big debate, whatever you want to call it, Gene is back on the line. Hey, Gene, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay.
I sure can.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Thank you, Tom, for taking my call. I like your show. I've been a listener since 11 years, but I don't know.
Thank you.
I buy product that you are advertised just, to keep up with the show. because I like the job that you're doing for us. And, okay, you said something about Malcolm Nance from the beginning.
Yeah, well, and he's just, I mean, I didn't mean to pick on Malcolm. He's just one of the more outspoken voices saying Bernie will melt down the party.
I'm just a listener.
Yeah.
I'm just a listener. I'm doing my part.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to him at Stephanie Miller all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I have to disagree with him. I don't think it is time now to pick up on Bernie Sanders or anybody. It's time for us to come together to beat Trump.
Yeah.
And Bernie is the one that brought a lot of light to this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Joe Biden have anything new to bring here. Don't forget that Joe Biden is the one that Trump is elected today. That's his administration. And I see, like, the black people like me in South Carolina, I listen to the congressman and go and vote for Joe Biden like that. He did not win any other state. That doesn't mean to every black people on any other state is going to vote for him.
Mm.
Okay, he doesn't have anything new to bring to this campaign, and he's not.
Well, I think there's probably a lot of people out there who are ready for I don't want anything new. You know, I would just like something normal. Yeah, I mean, the Trump administration is so abnormal that I think that a return to normalcy is something that resonates with people probably just as much as, you know, let's have Medicare for all.
Yes. And for me as a black man, Joe Biden will be like George Bush, Bill Clinton, Obama, and all of them. He won't bring anything new to me as a black man. But Bernie, I'm going to take my chance with him and Oberst or Elizabeth. I understand. I don't want to vote for Trump. I understand that. If I will vote like for anybody else, let me say that, or anybody else that the Democrat brought to me. But if you're talking about change, Bernie is the one, or Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
Yeah, well, I think there's a broad consensus about that. I mean, everybody gets that. But these two candidates, if you really want to continue the work that Franklin Roosevelt and Lyndon Johnson started in the Democratic Party, you know, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are the people to do that. But frankly, I think even Joe Biden is and all of the other so-called moderate candidates, Amy Klobuchar, I think all of them will move us forward in those directions, maybe a little more slowly, but I think we're moving in that direction. Thanks a lot for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment. So not a single person on any of the talk shows, on any of the Sunday shows, asked Mike Pence about his record with HIV in Indiana. This is like, you know, our media, why is it that when they get a Democrat on, they ask really tough, you know, stick the knife in questions. And when they get a Republican on, it's like, oh, you know, what's your favorite color? You know, it's like, what is with this? I honestly don't understand it. It just blows my mind. And I want to open the show up a little bit here. So I'm just going to say, you know, if there's anything else that you would like to talk about, I think a lot of us are kind of exhausted by the coronavirus stuff and the market falling apart and the electoral politics. So if there are other topics on your mind, I'm just going to open the show up here, and anything in particular that you'd like to call and talk about, feel free to do so. So, we'll continue with that. Robbie in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Robbie, what's on your mind?
What's on my mind is that I went to your book signing on Friday.
Yeah, it was nice to see you, Robbie.
I really appreciate the book. I'm glad that, you're putting this out there. But why is nobody talking about the results that the Associated Press are refusing to release in Iowa that was recanvassed by Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders? Right. Why are we not hearing this from you?
When the Des Moines Register, I believe, was the newspaper. They do this poll for every election, and it is one of the most watched polls in America. And when they refused to release the results of their poll, I thought,
no,
this
it was the
stinks.
Associated Press. Tom, it was the Associated Press that refused to release the results of the recanvassed election. Right now, the Iowa caucus from a month ago has not had their results finalized. The Iowa Democratic Party tried to finalize it. The Associated Press is refusing to release the numbers because there are inconsistencies still. Is this not Democrats rigging an Iowa caucus again?
Well, it sounds to me like it's the Associated Press trying to make sure that if they're putting out numbers, they're real numbers. Do you know the last time that the Associated Press didn't release numbers of an election? Well, first of all, I don't know that it's the Associated Press that's the logjam here, Robbie. I thought it was the Democratic Party.
I tweeted you the link.
Okay, then your complaint is not with the Democratic Party; it's with the AP.
No, it's with the Iowa Democratic Party because they are releasing numbers that the Associated Press is finding inconsistent.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, and
so let me.
It's just I think it's just a massive screw up, Robbie.
The last time. Okay, whatever, Tom. Like that's what the news is going to sell us. But meanwhile, the last time the Associated Press refused to release their numbers because of inconsistencies in the election was in Florida in 2000 with Al Gore and George Bush. Right. How is it that we cannot call corruption where corruption is and say that Iowa was attempted to be rigged, but it was not because Bernie Sanders has the Bernie Sanders app? Do you know what the Bernie Sanders app is?
Yeah. But that's...
The Bernie Sanders app was why there might be a lawsuit depending on what happens in Iowa and why Buttigieg had to call it. Because they tried rigging in Iowa, and nobody seems to care about the Democrats rigging elections. Okay. Why?
My guess, Robbie, was that Bernie was walking away with it, and in the poll, but apparently when you took the poll, not all the candidates were showing on the page. That was the complaint that Buttigieg had. But I thought it was randomized, so that would have been worked out. But I wasn't there, Robbie, and I'm putting that behind me. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. So I just want to, lay this out again and by the way, I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think many of us are kind of exhausted by the coronavirus stuff, the election stuff. I mean, it's just, phew. So if there are other issues that you would like to discuss, feel free to give us a shout. Now, and we've got a lot of stuff coming up on the program, too. Greg Palast is going to be here with us in our third hour. And, but right now we're talking politics, and we're going to be talking national health care in just a few minutes. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind today?
Hey, not too much, Tom. I wanted to just try to say why I think Bernie is the right man or right person at the right time for the world, really, not just America. And I'm not saying this just because I'm going to vote for Bernie, all right? As a matter of fact, I didn't support Bernie last time. And I don't know, I'm trying to make this short. I listened to Ari Ravenhoff over the weekend, all right? Ari Ravenhoff is a very brilliant person, but he has some right-wing sympathies that I don't agree with. All right, I listen to his show on Sirius XM constantly, right, when he was on. But Ari is a brilliant man, and, he did that interview in a really good way. And, look, Malcolm Nance, I'm speaking as a fellow, as a comrade of his in the intelligence profession. Malcolm Nance would work for a Trump administration if the offer was right. I know he would, just based on things he said. Like when he was...
well, if you think you could serve your country, why not? I mean...
Well, I would not work for a Trump administration. And let me tell you why. All right? We don't even fully know what terror is. All right? We don't. Or terrorism. It is whatever... Well, right now, it's whatever the Trump administration, deems as terrorism. Did you hear what Secretary Pompeo said about the Taliban agreement? Pompeo just doesn't want him to do a victory lap. Pompeo just doesn't want him to talk smack. Well, that's the standard Republican line. That's all they care about are words.
Well, I think what Trump is trying to do with Afghanistan is he's trying to get us out of Afghanistan so he can declare victory. And it's sort of, the Jerry Ford Vietnam, although Jerry Ford, actually it was Congress who cut off the funding for Vietnam, and they forced Jerry Ford's hand. And, Congress hasn't been willing to cut off funding for Afghanistan, for the Afghan war. But, I think that Trump wants to be able to say, as he goes into the election, I ended the war in Afghanistan. And what he's hoping is that, all the reporters will leave the country. So if there's a bloodbath, or if the Taliban starts doing the god-awful stuff that they used to do before, it won't be widely reported.
Oh, okay, but listen, that's what Pompeo said. You know this, Tom, because I've listened to you. Look, the Taliban immediately did a victory lap, all right? Trump, as opposed to Pompeo, says he expects the Taliban to fight terror. If they don't fight terrorism, he's going to go in with a force like the world has never seen. Now, it'll be a bloodbath. It'll be women and children mass executed. And why? In the Taliban, they're not going to fight terror? Of course, they've been fighting terror the whole time. Every single American they've killed, they've said is a terrorist. Trust me, Tom, the Taliban will. They are no different than Serbia. Okay, it's a turn of the century. It's an archduke scenario forming right now in in Afghanistan, and Russia, because you mentioned Syria. Russia's sending a battleship to Syria right now. Look, Turkey is going to give them a bloody note. They're going to be embarrassed. Turkey might even call in NATO, and then what's Russia going to do against NATO? They're going to overkill. They're going to overreact. They're going to blast everybody in sight.
Well, you're talking a World War III scenario here, Dave.
Yes, and this is why the old models aren't going to work. And this, back to Bernie, this is what we have to wage peace. All right, nobody wants to do it because nobody really understands what it is. Yeah. But right now, that's what we need to do, and nobody wants to do that except for Bernie. Bernie is like FDR right before World War II. And I've heard you, flush out that analogy, and I can't flesh out that analogy. I can't do it in 2 minutes. But the bottom line is, I think it's true because you're the only person that's mentioned Syria in that situation.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, these are all legitimate concerns. These are all very real concerns. And frankly, it's not so much that I'm flipped out. Let me rephrase that. I think that any of our Democratic candidates are going to move us in an appropriate and healthy direction. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I believe Bernie will too, Dave. I'm with you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
We have a special video up over at ThomHartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it had to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was one fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's as I said, it's available over at ThomHartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for our national health care system. Well, happy Monday. Another opportunity to help Free Speech TV stay on the air, keep this program here, keep this whole network going. by calling 1-877-378-8669. Free Speech TV really does need your help. Of course, there's a lot of things you can do. You can tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. We get more people watching. We can get more people donating. We can shorten these fund drives. So that's an important thing you can do. And I've been on the road here with this book tour. And one of the things that has really impressed me is how many people come up to me and say, hey, I just started watching you on Free Speech TV in the last X months because my friend so-and-so told me to. And it's really cool. We need more of that. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, talk about us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, Instagram, whatever it may be. Because Free Speech TV is listener supported, viewer supported. It's you, literally, who keep this network on the air. And, your $5 a month, $10 a month contributions, your commitments to a small monthly amount on a regular basis is the most important thing you can do to help Free Speech TV. And frankly, in my opinion, helping Free Speech TV is one of the most important things that you can do to help, resuscitate American politics. Frankly, I don't know how to say it other than that, just to resuscitate American politics. We have a political disaster going on in our country right now with this fellow in the White House, and the damage that's being done to the administration of justice, but also to basically all of the systems of governance. I mean, the Interior Department is gutted, the EPA is gutted, the two offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of or the National Security Council that were responsible for taking care of us if there is a pandemic or epidemic disease were both shut down 2 years ago by Donald Trump. There's nobody in either of those positions. He puts Mike Pence, the guy who thinks the world is 6,000 years old, cancer doesn't cause smoking, and you can pray away the gay. The guy who doesn't believe in science puts him in charge of our response to the coronavirus. And he was on the Sunday shows, and nobody even asked him about how his religious motivated, no, we're not going to do anything to help with the AIDS epidemic in Indiana back in 2000, actually caused Indiana to go from 20 cases to 200 cases of HIV. It's crazy. We need people who can America needs a network that actually talks about what's going on. And that's what this is right here, Free Speech TV. And you can help. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, proud student of Thom Hartmann University. Or the, just get out and vote the car magnet. It's like a bumper sticker to get out the vote. It says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, you get the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month for a year, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which should have been the Republican War on Voting because there's no Democratic War on voting. With a $240 gift, we have a virtual meet and greet. No viruses. Seriously, you don't have to leave your home. We will meet on the interwebs. We'll meet on the internet and have a conversation. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. That's Free Speech TV host postcards to send to friends and family. The car magnet to get out the vote. The Just Effing Vote tote bag. And my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all 3 Hidden History books autographed by the author. That's me. The Hidden History of the Guns in the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and its Betrayal of America. And by the way, they're fixing to do even more. We'll talk about that on the air. And number 3, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. And with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland, Oregon, and hang out with us, as long as you're not coughing, and we'll have a good time, and we'll go next door and have a nice meal. So those are the premiums, the Free Speech TV premiums. But the really important thing is the importance of having a television network that tells the truth, where you get, the Walter Cronkite of this generation, Amy Goodman, here on Free Speech TV. You get an extraordinary comedian and political commentary, Stephanie Miller, who really understands politics. I mean, her dad ran for vice president with Barry Goldwater back in 1964. She knows what she's talking about. You get this program, which I hope is of value to you. David Pakman, Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network that we just have to keep it going. I mean, there's no other way to say it. We have to keep this network going. And that happens when you call 877-378-8669 or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution online. It's pretty important stuff. I can't overstate how important it is. I don't think that, I'm not an official historian, but I'm a pretty good student of history. And I honestly believe we've never seen anything like this before. We've got to call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Back, Thom Hartmann here with you, and I wanted to talk about the coronavirus and the need for a national health care system, and we'll also get into the economy and pretty much anything else you want to talk about today. There's a lot going on in the news. Pete Buttigieg has pulled out of the race, and the speculation that I'm seeing is that he's going to endorse Joe Biden. Presumably on the idea that who knows? But my personal guess would be, I'll endorse you, Joe Biden. You make me defense secretary, and I think Pete Buttigieg would actually make a very good defense secretary. But who knows? We'll see. But as the coronavirus is spreading around the world, we find ourselves, the United States finds ourselves as literally the only country in the world without a national healthcare system that can confront it. I mean, ever since Franklin Roosevelt first proposed a national single-payer healthcare system, actually it was Teddy Roosevelt who first proposed. He was a Republican. The first Democrat to propose it was Franklin Roosevelt. And then Harry Truman actually proposed it, tried to put it into law. And then, John Kennedy campaigned for this. We played the clip of that last week. And then LBJ started the process with Medicare and Medicaid. And Robert Ball, the guy who wrote the Medicare law, said explicitly, clearly, unambiguously, it's in my book, Rebooting the American Dream, the whole long thing about it, where Robert Ball said, we designed Medicare to be scalable. We were going to start with people over 65. And then, every year we could drop it by 10 years, down to 55, and then down to 45, and then 35. And over a period of a decade, we would have everybody in the country covered by Medicare. It was designed that way from the beginning. And Hubert Humphrey was talking about doing that, expanding Medicaid and Medicare, excuse me. But ever since that start, well, actually, you can go all the way back to Social Security, Republicans have said no. They've said this is socialism. It's a terrible thing. They wanted to maintain the profits for their banksters who run the health insurance companies, instead of allowing Americans to have the safety and security of knowing that they can go to the doctor without going broke. And the biggest danger that we face right now, in my humble opinion, with regard to the combination, this very toxic combination of having a for-profit healthcare system and having a disease out there that spreads like the common cold but has a 2% mortality rate, and we're not really sure the exact numbers and how it's going to play out in the developed world. We have Chinese numbers, but somewhere between a 5 and 15% hospitalization rate. The biggest danger we have right now is that those people who have the minimal symptoms, that 80% of people who get the coronavirus and don't even realize that they have the coronavirus, they just think they have a cold, that they're going to be spreading it to other people and it's going to become ubiquitous. It's entirely possible that what we are looking at here is simply a return to the old normal. When Franklin Roosevelt was a kid, he got polio. When my wife's grandmother was a kid, she got polio. Her left arm was, pretty unusable all her life. And Franklin Roosevelt couldn't walk. I mean, it just happened. There was no vaccine against polio. There was no cure for polio. Before that, it was tuberculosis. We had sanatoriums, but we had no drug to treat it. And so you could slow down the progression of the disease, but people died from tuberculosis. When Edgar Allan Poe lived in New York City back in the mid-1800s, New York City was having a typhoid epidemic. And it was because their water system was contaminated by their sewer system. And, they thought it was bad air. It was the vapors, right? And so Edgar Allan Poe fled to upstate New York. I believe, I could be misremembering this because this is from high school days, but I believe that Lenore, the woman that he wrote the poem about, had died in that typhoid epidemic. But whatever it may be, I mean, this used to be how it was for the human race. If you got a bad scratch, 1% of the time it would become septic and you'd die. This is before antibiotics. If you got polio, well, some people died from it. Most people were disabled by it. If you got tuberculosis, you got pulled out of the pot. The only thing we had for that was isolation. You got put in a sanatorium. And the poor people suffered far more than the wealthy people. And back in the 1880s, under these kind of circumstances, the government of Germany decided, we really need to have a national healthcare system. And the first single-payer national healthcare system was put into place in the 1880s in Germany. And it's now spread all over the world, except here in the United States. So to go back to this, I mean, if this ends up being like the common cold, that is seasonal, and, yes, I know Trump said it's going to go away in the summer. Well, actually, he might be right. This is, coronaviruses tend to peak during the winter and diminish during the summer. The common cold being the most common one. And there's dozens of varieties of coronaviruses that are the common cold. They're the corona A category of viruses. But if this becomes the new normal, and in particular, if it turns out that there are a couple of antiviral drugs and that actually can prevent people from dying from this coronavirus disease, and they're doing these tests with these things. I have a printout. Here it is, right here. The first case. This was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. This is this piece that I was telling you my daughter, the nurse practitioner, shared with me over the weekend. It's titled "First Case of 2019 Novel Coronavirus in the United States," and they document how this person, this was up in the Seattle area, as I recall, and this was the first confirmed case in the United States. It started on January 19th, 2020. 35-year-old man presented at an urgent care clinic in Snohomish County, Washington, with a 4-day history of cough and fever. And they go through the whole thing. He started to deteriorate, and they put him on, and he developed pneumonia. And so they put him on IV antibiotics to knock out the pneumonia. Plus, they had him on 650 milligrams of acetaminophen every 4 hours, 600 milligrams of ibuprofen every 6 hours, 600 milligrams of guaifenesin, which is for his cough, and then they were giving him saline. This is 6 days into the hospitalization, and then his liver starts behaving weird, and you've got all these numbers, the alk phos and whatnot, and everything starting to look bad, right? Because and I'm looking at the X-rays here. So what do? They finally gave him, and it was called compassionate care. I'm looking for the name of the drug here. They gave clinicians. Here we go. At a period consistent with the development of radiographic pneumonia in this patient, clinicians pursued compassionate use of an investigational antiviral therapy. Treatment with intravenous remdesivir, a novel nucleotide analog prodrug in development, was initiated on the evening of day 7. No adverse effects were observed in association with the infusion. The vancomycin, the antibiotics for his pneumonia, were discontinued that night. And on day 8, the patient's clinical condition improved. Supplemental oxygen was discontinued. His oxygen saturation values improved to 94 to 96% while he was breathing ambient air, which is normally breathing. And the lower lobe rails were no longer present. His appetite improved. He was asymptomatic outside of an intermittent dry cough and a runny nose, basically. And as of January 30th, 2020, the patient remains hospitalized, but he is afebrile. In other words, he's able to get around. His symptoms are resolved. He's just a little weak. So they're trying out some of these drugs, and frankly, I think this is the most likely outcome that we're going to have, is that, for the people who get seriously ill, we will develop antiviral drugs that will knock this out. We did it with AIDS. They have found that there are some antiviral drugs that are actually effective against Ebola. Now, Ebola is much, more rigorous a disease, and these drugs are not anywhere near as effective as, 100%, but the drugs are being developed. Whether or not a vaccine will work, vaccines, they've been trying to come up with vaccines for the common cold forever, and it doesn't seem to, it's been a real challenge. But basically, I think we're going to get to the point, probably within a year, where even if this becomes a persistent thing that comes back every year like the flu, we will be able to deal with it. But then the question is, are we going to deal with it the Republican way, which is rich people who can afford the $5,000 deductible and can go to the hospital are going to get the treatment, and poor people who can't are going to die, which is how it is right now with lots of diseases. I mean, you saw the study that Yale University did that was published in the British medical journal Lancet, where they said that a Medicare for All program in the United States would save 68,000 lives. Now, some of those, when you dig into the study, some of those lives were being saved by early diagnosis. People presenting with, a lump that is cancer when it's still isolated to the lump, before it's metastasized. So that was a good chunk of them. And I don't have the study in front of me. I don't have the exact numbers here, so I'm not going to just throw numbers out. But the other part of it was that, people are postponing care for things like pneumonia, respiratory infections. And then they end up getting sick and dying, without going to the hospital, or they get to the hospital and it's basically too late. Why? Because of money. Because of this Republican healthcare system. So, I mentioned in the first hour this guy in Florida who had just come back from China, went to the hospital to get himself tested. It cost him over $3,000. It's like, wait a minute. I mean, the Republican efforts to maintain profits for the health insurance industry are literally putting us all at risk. And it's time to have Medicare for all. This is a national security issue, and particularly as we're facing the possibility that we're going to have recurrent seasonal infections of something that actually has the potential not just to make people really sick, but to kill people. Now, of course, the flu does that, as we know. We've all learned 35,000 people a year die from the flu. A lot of those are, people who are dying. Some of them are people who are really sick to begin with. Some of them, they're just not seeking care soon enough. Why? Because our healthcare system's all screwed up.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's time to say, healthcare should not be a profit center for banksters, as in health insurance companies. It should be the way we treat people. And welcome back. Patricia in Portage, Wisconsin, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Patricia, what's on your mind today?
Okay, I'm usually calling about trying to end slaughterhouses and help animals, but this virus came out of the wildlife markets in China.
Correct.
And that means it came out of a mammal, and it has jumped the species barrier to humans. Why can't it jump the human species barrier back to cows, pigs, chickens in feedlots, or...
It may be able to, Patricia. I mean, this, flu is carried by birds and by pigs. And in fact, the flu outbreak of 1919 came out of a pig farm in Kansas, as best we can tell. So, it's not impossible that this virus could move back and forth between humans and other animals.
Yeah, imagine if it goes to a feedlot, nose to nose, they're all over the place, crammed in, and then they go through and they're mashed into hamburgers by the thousands of animals per hamburger, and it goes out to the public. I mean,
well, by then, we cook meat, and we disinfect meat and things. I don't see that as much of a problem, but the possibility that it might mutate into a more virulent form inside of our, I'm with you, Patricia. I think that our commercial factory farming, in quotes, of animals is brutal and is a public health menace. And when you add the high levels of antibiotics that are being given to these animals, we know, for example, the I think it's H157 form of E. coli, the fecal bacteria, that kills people, shuts down their kidneys. That came out of feedlots. That came out of industrial animal agriculture. It literally didn't exist before the 1980s, or maybe the 1970s. People used to eat steak tartare, and they used to put raw eggs in with their orange juice and put it in the blender in the morning. I mean, my wife's father, my father-in-law, who has now passed away, but he used to do both those things. He'd put an egg in his orange juice every morning. You can't do that anymore because now you've got these pathogens that have been subjected to antibiotics over and over and over and over again in these feedlots, and have developed not only antibiotic resistance but also have become more destructive. So we've already seen this, and we really need to be reconsidering this.
Sometimes the manure of these animals goes on to lettuce and other things that aren't cooked.
Yeah, and this is one of the ways that we end up with these E. coli and salmonella infections in our food, in our vegetables.
It concerns me about the coronavirus because it came out of mammals, other mammals, and I just wonder, if some guy out in a feedlot passes it on to a cow, it's like nuts.
Yeah. My concern there would be that it mutates in ways. Again, we're building the case, I think, Patricia, to have a national healthcare system.
I'm all with you.
Yeah.
Bernie, go Bernie.
Yeah, there you go. And to eat a whole heck of a lot fewer animal products. If we all dialed back on eating animal products to most of the history of the human race, animal products were not central to diet. They were basically spices essentially. If we were to do that, we would save a lot of lives. We would animals' lives, and we would save a lot of human lives. Patricia, and go back to animal agriculture if you have to have it that's at least humane and small scale. We'll be back. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Oh, this is mind-boggling. This Hiroko Tabuchi, writing in the New York Times today, this is March 2nd, New York Times, an official at the Interior Department embarked on a campaign that has inserted misleading language about climate change, including debunked claims that increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is beneficial. Have put these misleading language about climate change into the agency's, the Interior Department's, scientific reports, according to documents reviewed by the New York Times. The misleading language appears in at least 9 different reports, including environmental studies and impact statements on major watersheds in the American West that could be used to justify allocating increasingly scarce water to farmers at the expense of wildlife conservation and fisheries. The effort was led by Inder M. Goklany, a longtime Interior Department employee who in 2017, near the start of the Trump administration, was promoted to the office of the Deputy Secretary with responsibility for reviewing the agency's climate policies. This is mind-boggling. They call this internally, this is something they know about in the Interior Department. They call it Gach's uncertainty language. His name is Gachlany, and Gach's is his handle, I guess. In Interior Department emails to scientists, Mr. Gachlany pushed misleading interpretations of climate science, saying, quote, "It may be overestimating the rate of global warming for whatever reason." He's also instructed department scientists to add that rising carbon dioxide is beneficial because, quote, "it may increase plant water use efficiency and lengthen the agricultural growing season." Both assertions, the New York Times notes, misrepresent the scientific consensus that overall climate change will result in severe disruptions to global agriculture and significant reductions in crop yields. So, first they took a meat axe to the Environmental Protection Agency. Now they're taking a meat axe to the Interior Department, and they've got a guy inside the Interior Department in 9 different reports saying, yes, more carbon dioxide is a wonderful thing. I remember, because plants breathe carbon dioxide, don't you know? I remember when Mark Morano, back when we were willing to tolerate having him on this show, this is like, 10 years ago, being funded by the fossil fuel billionaires, and Mark Morano coming on and trying to say, oh yeah, this is a good thing, more carbon dioxide in the air because plants breathe it and it makes plants grow faster. Well, yeah, that's actually true. Plants do breathe carbon dioxide, and increased carbon dioxide levels make them grow a little faster, at least the cellulose. But the nutritional value of the plants, if you're talking about plants that we eat, actually declines as a result of this, and the plants absorb fewer minerals. So the woody, the wood basically that you get from things like trees when they grow faster is actually weaker. I mean, this is not how evolution has not prepared plants for CO2 levels to go from roughly 300 parts per million to over 400 parts per million. We've seen a 25% increase in CO2 levels in the atmosphere, basically in my lifetime, and this is not, evolution has not prepared us for this. And, so then the New York Times reaches out to the Interior Department and they say, oh, you need to talk to the Bureau of Reclamation, which oversees the nation's dams and water resources. Uncertainty is a part of climate modeling, as it is with all scientific modeling, says the Interior Department. Right.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We need Medicare for all if we're going to deal with this, and we need it now, number one. And number two, we need to get science back into the administration. Well, happy Monday. Another opportunity to help Free Speech TV stay on the air, keep this program here, keep this whole network going, by calling 1-877-378-8669. Free Speech TV really does need your help. Of course, there's a lot of things you can do. You can tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. We get more people watching. We can get more people donating. We can shorten these fund drives. So that's an important thing you can do. And I've been on the road here with this book tour. And one of the things that has really impressed me is how many people come up to me and say, hey, I just started watching you on Free Speech TV in the last X months because my friend so-and-so told me to. And it's really cool. We need more of that. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, talk about us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, Instagram, whatever it may be. Because Free Speech TV is listener supported, viewer supported. It's you, literally, who keep this network on the air. And your $5 a month, $10 a month contributions, your commitments to a small monthly amount on a regular basis is the most important thing you can do to help Free Speech TV. And frankly, in my opinion, helping Free Speech TV is one of the most important things that you can do to help, resuscitate American politics. Frankly, I don't know how to say it other than that, just to resuscitate American politics. We have a political disaster going on in our country right now with this fellow in the White House, and the damage that's being done to the administration of justice, but also to basically all of the systems of governance. I mean, the Interior Department is gutted, the EPA is gutted, the two offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of or the National Security Council that were responsible for taking care of us if there is a pandemic or epidemic disease were both shut down 2 years ago by Donald Trump. There's nobody in either of those positions. He puts Mike Pence, the guy who thinks the world is 6,000 years old, cancer doesn't cause smoking, and you can pray away the guy who doesn't believe in science, puts him in charge of our response to the coronavirus. And he was on the Sunday shows, and nobody even asked him about how, his religious motivated, no, we're not going to do anything to help with the AIDS epidemic in Indiana back in 2000, actually caused Indiana to go from 20 cases to 200 cases of HIV. It's crazy. We need people who can actually, America needs a network that actually talks about what's going on. And that's what this is right here, Free Speech TV. And you can help. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, proud student of Thom Hartmann University. Or the, just get out and vote the car magnet. It's like a bumper sticker to get out the vote. It says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, you get the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month for a year, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which should have been the Republican War on Voting because there's no Democratic War on voting. With a $240 gift, we have a virtual meet and greet. No viruses. Seriously. You don't have to leave your home. We will meet on the interwebs. We'll meet on the internet and have a conversation. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. That's Free Speech TV host postcards to send to friends and family. The car magnet to get out the vote. The Just Effing Vote tote bag. And my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all 3 Hidden History books autographed by the author. That's me. The Hidden History of the Guns in the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and its Betrayal of America. And by the way, they're fixing to do even more. We'll talk about that on the air. And number 3, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. And with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland, Oregon, and hang out with us, as long as you're not coughing, and we'll have a good time, and we'll go next door and have a nice meal. So those are the premiums, the Free Speech TV premiums. But the really important thing is the importance of having a television network that tells the truth, where you get, the Walter Cronkite of this generation, Amy Goodman, here on Free Speech TV. You get an extraordinary comedian and political commentary, Stephanie Miller, who really understands politics. I mean, her dad ran for vice president with Barry Goldwater back in 1964. She knows what she's talking about. You get this program, which I hope is of value to you. David Pakman, Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network that we just have to keep it going. I mean, there's no other way to say it. We have to keep this network going. And that happens when you call 877-378-8669 or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution online. It's pretty important stuff. I can't overstate how important it is. I don't think that, I'm not an official historian, but I'm a pretty good student of history. And I honestly believe we've never seen anything like this before. We've got to call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Coming up this week on The Science Revolution, is the coronavirus about to show us the cost of not having Medicare for all? Former health insurance executive Wendell Potter, public health professor at George Washington University Medical School Dr. Lena Wen, and author of The Coming Plague, Lori Garrett, all join me for the most up-to-date information on the now pandemic coronavirus. Don't miss it, and check it out wherever fine podcasts are available. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Nancy in Elkhart, Indiana. Hey, Nancy, what's on your mind today?
Well, hi, Tom. I have spoken with you before, and it's usually about teaching, and this does have to do with the medical crisis. After I graduated from college in 72, back in Elkhart, Indiana, we, I would say about 1973 or 74, when we had to go back to school, we teachers had to convene in some place like, would it be like in the theater, school theater, or in the gyms? We all had to get there, and we had to be tested. All of us had to be tested automatically for even the TB. That back then, even then, I should say, we had to all be tested for TB before we could go back to school and teach.
Yep. I remember that.
I would think, okay, I don't know who was paying for it. I'm sure it was in taxes.
Yeah.
I doubt if we bargained for it.
Yeah,
but that would seem very...
Yeah, I remember those tests. There was the TB Tyne test, which was this little finger thing that had 3 little things on it that they'd stick you with. And then I also had a TB test once. And this is when Louise and I were running a community for abused kids. This was, late 70s, early 80s, where they just gave me a little shot under the, on the inside of my arm, just created a little bubble of stuff. And then if it turned red, it meant that you were reacting and therefore you had tuberculosis. And that was necessary.
Right.
Yeah. I don't. They may still do that.
That was very common.
Yeah.
No, because school also people don't get together at the beginning of school. We all wanted to be in our classrooms.
Right.
We didn't want to be meeting with all the people that ran the school system.
Right.
But that was so common, and why not have that kind of stuff before you begin to teach or anything?
Yeah, and this is my sense of how this coronavirus thing is going to play out. There's going to be the initial stage of kind of freak out. And then it's going to become more of like, okay, this is what we have and this is what we have to deal with. And as we develop drugs for it and hopefully vaccines for it, we're going to settle in. And hopefully it'll go the way of polio, and it'll just vanish. We can get rid of it.
Right.
And
like you said, the administration should be the first to even think about it, right?
Yeah. Amen. Nancy, thanks for sharing that story. It's a great one. And thank you for calling in and watching us on Free Speech TV. Patrick in Seaside, California. Hey, Patrick, what's on your mind today?
I had some comments I'd like to air about Malcolm Nance, Tom, but before I do, could you maybe ask Greg when he comes on the third hour to flesh out when he was on Rising Up with Sonali with you a couple weeks ago about the 3 million provisional ballots that were cast in 2016 primary in California, 2 million of which were thrown out, and the fact that I remember vividly over a period of a couple of weeks where Lee Camp was saying that leading up to the Democratic National Convention in 2016, county after county that had voted for supposedly Hillary were flipping back to Bernie. I wanted to know if he could flesh that out since I'm not going to be able to talk to him. My comments about Malcolm Nance and our mutual friend, Barbara Honegger, it's very fortuitous, I believe, that she happened to be in Reagan's Oval Office when he had his first cabinet meeting with all of his cabinet heads in February or March of 1981, and he got to William Casey, the new head of the CIA, and asked him what his goals for the agency were, and he said, well, Mr. President, when everything the American public believes is false, believes to be true is false, then we know our disinformation campaign will be complete.
I don't believe that Bill Casey said that.
Well, that's what Barbara Honegger claims, and she passed it on to, I forget the woman who publicized that.
Yeah.
That's Barbara Honegger stands by that. She was in the office and she was taking notes for the meeting.
I mean, maybe he was speaking about one specific thing that people believe.
You can talk to her the next time. You can talk to her the next time she's on the show.
That Bill Casey was apparently the guy who set up the Iran-Contra deal. He was the point man. He ran the Reagan campaign in 1980. And according to Bonnie Sauter, the president of Iran, Bill Casey was the guy who organized the deal with the Ayatollahs to ship spare parts and weaponry to the Iranians in exchange for holding the hostages until Reagan was sworn in. And it wouldn't surprise me if Bill Casey was referring to that. But I think some universal statement about when all we do is lie and all the Americans believe our lies, then that doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's what you have to talk. You have to take that up with Barbara. But I wanted to get to my comments about Malcolm Nance.
Sure.
I am just.
And by the way, if I can, Patrick, Malcolm's not here to defend himself. So let's you can speak to the issue.
I'm not going to. I want to use him as an. I don't want to specifically just attack the man. I want to take a broader point when I'm talking about the intelligence community at large. I hate the Republicans. I hate Donald Trump. They're fascists, but I don't want the intelligence community trying to ride in like the cavalry to save the day. And MSNBC basically has a turnstile for retired admirals, generals, and intelligence agents. And I just don't understand how a certain segment of the left falls all over themselves, slobbering over members of the community, the intelligence community, like Malcolm Nance, when he goes after people like Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, Edward Snowden, I believe Jeremy Scahill, and says that these are disinformationists or they're unwitting Russian dupes. I don't want the CIA or the intelligence community controlling the narrative. There's a ton of books on how the CIA and the Pentagon have infiltrated our universities, Hollywood, our media. There's 2 books that came out, Spooked, how the CIA manipulates the media and hoodwinks Hollywood, and Thinked, how the CIA tricked the world's best writers. I mean, I don't think that we should trade one, going from the fire into the frying pan or vice versa. We shouldn't trust the intelligence community any more than we trust the Republicans or Trump.
And I think that was the big message that Ed Snowden shared with us is, these guys are operating in many cases outside of the law. And with the FISA Act up for renewal, and the Patriot Act up for renewal, I believe, in the next month or so, there's hopefully going to be a hearty conversation, a healthy conversation about this. Setting Malcolm aside, he's one of many former intelligence officials and military guys who goes on TV all the time. Yeah, I get that.
Getting back briefly to Barbara Honegger, you can go online and YouTube, and I believe the talk that she gave in November at the last JFK convention in Dallas is titled JFK and the Road to 9/11. If you type in that, JFK and the Road to 9/11, and then Barbara Honegger, 1 and 2 Gs, she talks about that quote from Bill Casey, and his follow-up, she said, Reagan said, well, what do you mean, Bill? He said, well, in order to lie to the enemy, Mr. President, we have to lie to the American public first.
Yeah.
Again, seriously, take when next time she's on your show.
No, I'm not saying it wasn't said. What I'm saying is I'm guessing there's some missing context here. But Patrick, I get it. Thank you very much for the call. Kara in Blaine, Minnesota, Blane, Minnesota.
Blaine.
Oh, Blaine.
It's
yeah.
Blaine.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got a funny capital letter in here. I'm sorry. What's up?
No problem. I was calling to talk to you about Medicare for All and how I just get so frustrated when I hear candidates like Joe Biden and some of the moderate candidates saying that union members don't want to lose their insurance. Mm-hmm. Speaking as somebody who gets our insurance through my husband's union, I am saying I would much rather pay an extra $3,000 or $4,000 a year for our health insurance and not have to pay almost $20,000 for the insurance that we currently have.
Yeah.
And to have expanded.
Kara, I'm sorry. There we go. Kara, you're back. I'm sorry. I lost you for a second there.
And I wish that it would be framed in more of a, this could equal the largest tax cut for working class Americans or the largest wage increase for working class Americans, whichever way you want to frame it. I think that would be so much more effective.
Yeah.
In trying to fight against that. And I don't hear people on the left, I don't hear progressives saying that very
I think
often.
The good news, Kara, is that we're not going to be having this debate very much longer. I would be amazed if another 4 years goes by and we don't have something resembling Medicare for All, or we haven't really started aggressively moving in that direction. Bernie has so successfully in a 4-year period shifted, really a 5-year period. Look at the primary in 2016. Shifted the conversation in this country. I mean, it used to be that the idea of a public option was controversial. Now you've got Joe Biden talking about a public option. I really think that that we're moving in that direction. I think that's a good thing. I think, yes, the unions will be supporting Medicare for all, and for good reasons as well. So, yeah, I'm with you. Kara, thanks so much for listening to AM 930. It's great to hear from you. I appreciate the call. It's 44 and coming up on 45 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. And as I mentioned at the top of the next hour, Greg Palast will be with us. He's got some interesting information about what's going on in California that if you're in California, you need to know about.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
And stick around. We'll be right back with more of your calls after this. And this I think is very interesting. Nouriel Roubini, he was the guy who back in 2007 was saying, look out, the economy is going to crash. And he told the German newspaper Der Spiegel that he is expecting now a stock market drop of as much as 40% this year. Now, the market's up today, and it's up in almost all probability because the central banks of the U.S. Central Bank, the Chinese Central Bank, the Japanese Central Bank, they're all talking stimulus. They're all talking about lowering interest rates and pumping more money into the economy and buying bonds and making the world safe for the fat cats again. But is Dr. Doom right? I think he is, and if you look at a 40 or 50-year graph of the stock market, what you see is this boom. It's exploded in the last 15 years or so, in ways, or 20 years, since around 2000. In ways that it frankly shouldn't have. I think we are still in a bubble economy with regard to the stock market. And, already Trump is starting to lose his talking point. I mean, we got the greatest economy ever. Well, no, we don't have the greatest economy ever. Wages are stagnant. People are working 2 and 3 jobs. Yeah, unemployment is low, but so is workforce participation. You've got 10,000 boomers, a day aging out of the workforce as well. So he's going to lose that talking point, and Nouriel Roubini points that out too. And what's more, he said that this is from Raw Story here, Brad Reed at Raw Story. What's more, Roubini said that Trump's campaign was toast, no matter who wins the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. He says the Democratic field is poor, but Trump is dead. Politically speaking, of course. He said he's seen fears about coronavirus already impacting his local economy. He says, I live in New York City, and people there are hardly going to restaurants, cinemas, or theaters. If it comes, we are totally screwed. He actually dropped the F-bomb, but you get the point. And I'm seeing this too, and I don't see how our economy can make it through this, frankly. Long term, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll get through this. But over the short term, we have right now, and I saw this yesterday, the planes are still full, but I don't know how much longer they're going to continue to be full. And, people are canceling travel plans. Companies are canceling travel plans. People are not going to restaurants as frequently. I mean, people are, I think right across the board, the first industry that's going to get beat up with this and going to get beat up badly with this is going to be the travel industry. And, I could just tell you myself, I was very uncomfortable flying this last, over the last 2 weeks, I was in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, and Chicago. And, for this book tour thing. And every single time I'd get on the plane and I'd wonder, who was the person who sat before me on this seat. And I'm trying not to touch surfaces and things. And it's got to be a scary time for flight attendants too. So I think our economy is going to take a hit. I really do. We'll be back with your calls. Stick around. It's 49 minutes past the hour. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Well, the field is starting to consolidate. Amy Klobuchar just dropped out of the race and is going to be appearing with Joe Biden at a rally in in Texas. Thank you, Sean. This news just came flying by. That's fascinating. So the moderate side, I think what's happening is, Bernie right now is ahead. He has more delegates than anybody else. And the moderate side of the Democratic Party, to use the word that the media uses, is consolidating. Pete Buttigieg just dropped out. Now Amy Klobuchar is dropping out. What's this going to do? How is this going to affect the primary? And if Joe Biden is the nominee, how's that going to affect the general election? My general take on it is that Donald Trump has been such a terrible president and done such a terrible job that, outside of his base, he's got no legs. And that pretty much whoever gets the nomination, the Democratic nomination, is going to be the next president. Knock wood here. Let's not take anything for granted. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, well, let's pick up there. If it's a Bernie versus Biden two-person race, what I hear, Tom, when I talk to people, is that the so-called moderate wing of the Democratic Party are afraid of Bernie. I think a lot of Democrats, and I'm surprised when I talk to them, they really want to get back to the line of scrimmage. That means get rid of Trump and then sit on the ball for 3 plays. And then in 4 years, they're going to have to punt because you know what they're going to say? Biden didn't do anything. And then the Republicans will say, yeah, Biden didn't do anything. Bernie Sanders, yeah, they're going to call him a socialist, but you know what? We're going to hear nonstop Burisma and Hunter Biden from Trump, too.
Yep.
Whichever one gets it. But this fear of wanting to do anything, a fear of progress, is really frightening within the Democratic Party. They just really want to go back to blithely going about their business without having to think about a dictator taking over. But once the dictator's gone, they think they're safe. But, Tom, this dictator ain't going away. I don't care whether they hold the White House or not. The Republican Party have defected, and this right-wing propaganda is never going to stop. We're going to be dealing with it with the Russian interference forever. Yeah. And you can see how they're doing this with the COVID-19. Could I just give an analogy about saying that a 2%, Rush Limbaugh said, this thing's got a 98% survival rate. That's a 2% fatality rate. Let me give you some examples about what 2% means. A 2% fatality rate means you would never get in your car because you wouldn't last the rest of the year. A 2% fatality rate means that you would never get on an airplane because we have millions of airplane flights each year, and even if it were only 1 million, 2% of 1 million is 20,000. That's 60 airplane crashes a day. Okay? That you'd never get on an airplane. I asked my surgeon last year when I had surgery, have you ever done this before? He goes, yeah, thousands of times. I said, how many thousand? He said, more than 3,000. Now, if the next words out of his mouth were, and 60 people died, do you think I would go back to get my surgery?
Right.
2% is huge. 2% is a huge, extraordinarily huge fatality rate.
Yes.
When you compare to 80,000 people a year dying of the flu, this coronavirus is something like 80 times higher.
Right.
Because that's 1/4 of 1%.
I completely agree with you, Paul. And therefore, what does this have to do with politics? I mean, the one thing that concerns me about the coronavirus and the political and the election that's coming up is that when people are frightened, they tend to become more conservative in the way that they vote. They flee to safety. And if Donald Trump can play Big Daddy, I'm gonna protect you, but be afraid, but I'll protect you, which is what he did with, the caravans of immigrants bringing diseases and rapists are coming. That's how he got in the White House in 2016. If he can figure out a way to do this with the coronavirus in 2020, it's going to be very, very problematic. On the other hand, if it becomes obvious to everybody that the emperor has no clothes in regard to protection and planning for this thing, I think we've got a better chance. But we'll see.
And that's that's the propaganda part. What you just said is they want to frighten you and yet reassure you at the same time. And that's what Limbaugh did last week. He said this thing is a common cold. And the next words out of his mouth were, China is weaponizing this virus to take Trump down. Well, wait a minute. If you're going to weaponize a virus, you don't weaponize it as something as benign as the common cold.
Right.
I mean, that's two contradictory things that
and they're also saying, I mean, this was what Don Jr. said over the weekend was, the Democrats want millions of people to die. And that was be afraid of the disease, be afraid of the Democrats. This is the be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. And when people are frightened, like I said, they become more conservative. And, it's very troubling. Paul, thank you.
Well, Tom, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
Kirkland, Washington is my community. I live 2 miles from that assisted living center where those people got sick, and about 4 miles up the 405 from Evergreen Healthcare Center where they died. Mm-hmm. And you know what? When people start dropping dead in your community, Kirkland, by the way, is a very upscale community. This isn't like it's just the streets of some big city where you have drugs and needles, and these are. And this is a rehab assisted living center. These people didn't go out. I've been to this place. I played music at that place. They didn't go out. Somebody brought it in who didn't know they had it.
Right. So
they're not protecting us.
Are you finding, like we're seeing here in Portland, that in some cases, the stores are selling out of things like, hand sanitizers and whatnot?
I don't know about that. I couldn't speak to that. I think people are kind of staying inside and just being careful. But really, what can you do?
Right.
Because cities don't have their own infectious disease departments. We have to kind of depend on.
But states
CDC.
do. States do, and our governor here in Oregon, I think has this well in hand. I have no faith at all in Trump, but I do have faith in our governor and in your governor, in Jay Inslee.
Yeah,
Paul.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I absolutely do. But the information has got to come out from, the state's disease control centers have to get information from a larger source, a larger database too.
Yeah. So we'll see how it plays out. I think I've already shared 16 different variations on my opinion with you all. Paul, thanks for the call. At the top of the next hour, Greg Palast is going to join us. We're going to be talking about the upcoming election, the Super Tuesday, tomorrow. And in particular, if you live in California, there's some information that you need to have. And then I want to talk about the economy and what Nouriel Roubini is saying and how I think this is all going to affect us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
We have a special video up over at ThomHartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it had to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was one fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's as I said, it's available over at thomhartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for our national healthcare system. Well, happy Monday. Another opportunity to help Free Speech TV stay on the air, keep this program here, keep this whole network going by calling 1-877-378-8669. Free Speech TV really does need your help. Of course, there's a lot of things you can do. You can tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. We get more people watching. We can get more people donating. We can shorten these fund drives. So that's an important thing you can do. And I've been on the road here with this book tour. And one of the things that has really impressed me is how many people come up to me and say, hey, I just started watching you on Free Speech TV in the last X months because my friend so-and-so told me to. And it's really cool. We need more of that. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, talk about us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, Instagram, whatever it may be. Because Free Speech TV is listener supported, viewer supported. It's you, literally, who keep this network on the air. And, your $5 a month, $10 a month contributions, your commitments to a small monthly amount on a regular basis is the most important thing you can do to help Free Speech TV. And frankly, in my opinion, helping Free Speech TV is one of the most important things that you can do to help, resuscitate American politics. Frankly, I don't know how to say it other than that, just to resuscitate American politics. We have a political disaster going on in our country right now with this fellow in the White House, and the damage that's being done to the administration of justice, but also to basically all of the systems of governance. I mean, the Interior Department is gutted, the EPA is gutted, the two offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of or the National Security Council that were responsible for taking care of us if there is a pandemic or epidemic disease were both shut down 2 years ago by Donald Trump. There's nobody in either of those positions. He puts Mike Pence, the guy who thinks the world is 6,000 years old, cancer doesn't cause smoking, and you can pray away the gay. The guy who doesn't believe in science puts him in charge of our response to the coronavirus. And he was on the Sunday shows, and nobody even asked him about how his religious motivated, no, we're not going to do anything to help with the AIDS epidemic in Indiana back in 2000, actually caused Indiana to go from 20 cases to 200 cases of HIV. It's crazy. We need people who can America needs a network that actually talks about what's going on. And that's what this is right here, Free Speech TV. And you can help. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, proud student of Thom Hartmann University, or the just get out and vote the car magnet. It's like a bumper sticker to get out the vote. It says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, you get the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month for a year, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which should have been the Republican War on Voting because there's no Democratic War on voting. With a $240 gift, we have a virtual meet and greet. No viruses. Seriously. You don't have to leave your home. We will meet on the interwebs. We'll meet on the internet and have a conversation. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. That's Free Speech TV host postcards to send to friends and family. The car magnet to get out the vote. The Just Effing Vote tote bag. And my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all 3 Hidden History books autographed by the author. That's me. The Hidden History of the Guns in the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and its Betrayal of America. And by the way, they're fixing to do even more. We'll talk about that on the air. And number 3, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. And with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland, Oregon, and hang out with us, as long as you're not coughing, and we'll have a good time, and we'll go next door and have a nice meal. So those are the premiums, the Free Speech TV premiums. But the really important thing is the importance of having a television network that tells the truth, where you get, the Walter Cronkite of this generation, Amy Goodman, here on Free Speech TV. You get an extraordinary comedian and political commentary, Stephanie Miller, who really understands politics. I mean, her dad ran for vice president with Barry Goldwater back in 1964. She knows what she's talking about. You get this program, which I hope is of value to you. David Pakman, Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network that we just have to keep it going. I mean, there's no other way to say it. We have to keep this network going. And that happens when you call 877-378-8669 or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution online. It's pretty important stuff. I can't overstate how important it is. I don't think that, I'm not an official historian, but I'm a pretty good student of history. And I honestly believe we've never seen anything like this before. We've got to call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is our old buddy Greg Palast of, gregpalast.com and the investigative reporter and writing for The Guardian and everything else. Hey, Greg, welcome back to the program.
Hey, glad to be with you, Tom. It's an important day, and we got a big story coming out in The Guardian.
Okay, so tell us about it.
Well, it looks like California's very, very strange system of voting could shaft Bernie Sanders out of 500,000 votes, and by the way, Mike Bloomberg out of 1/3 votes, by rules set up by the Democratic National Committee in California and enforced by Alex Padilla, who is campaigning hard for Joe Biden. So the way that the California voting system is set up in the primaries here is going to really disqualify a whole lot of votes by Sanders and some by Bloomberg as well.
How do you disqualify voters for I get it where, for example, if you didn't pick a party, or I guess there isn't it, if you didn't pick a party, you'll get a ballot that doesn't have the presidential candidate on it, or there's
Yes. Okay, here's the problem. We have 5 million California residents who register as independents. That is what they call here NPP, no party preference.
Right, thank you.
Now, if you register as no party preference, now remember, it turns out about 86% of these people, about 57%, want to vote in the Democratic primary, which is their right by law. That is, if you're an independent, you can vote in the Democratic Party. But good luck trying. So
that's because if you get a ballot by mail, your ballot doesn't have the primary on it. It doesn't have Democratic or Republican candidates. So my understanding from our conversations in Los Angeles 2 weekends ago is that what you have to do is bring that ballot with you to the polls, and then right there, turn that ballot in and unmarked, and say, I want to get rid of this, and I want to register as a Democrat right now so I can vote in the Democratic primary. Isn't that right?
There's two things you can do. You can do today in early voting, or tomorrow on official election day. And can you see these two ballots? One says Democratic on it, official Democratic ballot.
Right.
And the other says, here it is. Democratic ballot. And then the other one says Democratic crossover ballot. So here's what you have to do. You have to go in and take your NPB ballot, if you're one of the 4 million who got that ballot without any of the presidential candidates, and we know most of you want to vote in the Democratic primary, according to the polls in California. Take in your NPB ballot, include the envelope, and ask for the Democratic crossover ballot. Now, here's the weird thing, Tom. According to Secretary of State Padilla, The word has gone out to all poll workers that unless you know the magic word crossover ballot, they can't give you the crossover ballot. They can't give you the Democratic Party ballot. Now, again, if you're an independent voter, there are 5 million of you, 4 million of you got the ballot without any
I get all this, Greg, but I don't see how this, screws Bernie any more than it does Joe Biden.
Oh, plenty, because it turns out that the Bernie is gigantically ahead by at least 2-1 over Joe Biden among independent voters who want to vote in the Democratic Party.
I see.
It also shafts, frankly, Mike Bloomberg out of about 300,000 votes, they'll figure, by independents who want to vote for Bloomberg, much less than Bernie. This is because young people, especially students, tend to register without a party preference. Same with Latinos, these are the heavy Bernie. This is the heavy Bernie Democratic young demographic. It's the young people and Latino voters, Latinx voters, and we figure Bernie will lose about 553,000 votes this way. You have to understand, according to the key pollsters, which is like Political Data Inc., which does the polling for both Democrats and Republicans, most people really, truly, who are independent, really want to vote in the Democratic primary, but don't know how. They don't know how to change that ballot for one with the candidates on them, and they don't know. They don't even know that they have the right to do that. They get this ballot without the candidates. They go, "Where's Bernie?" And he ain't there. Right. So there's two ways. I want to repeat this. Take in your NPP ballot into the polling station with the envelope and say, I want, and you got to use the magic word, I want a crossover Democratic ballot, because they won't tell you the word. They can't by law. Crossover Democratic Party ballot, or say, I want to re-register today, which is one thing you can do for the first time in California. You can register for one day as a Democrat. And I'm not telling you to register as a Democrat, but if you want to vote in the Democratic primary and you're having problems, re-register on the spot as a Democrat for the day. It doesn't mean you have to vote whatever you want in the general, but it allows you the Democratic ballot today, only in California.
Is there going to be any effort to change this, Greg?
Well, no, because the Secretary of State, our little Catherine Harris, Brian Kemp, Alex Padilla, is campaigning for Joe Biden. You know, the party establishment.
Well, that's just right.
Yeah, I mean, well, no. You know what? Here's the problem. Why do we have elections officials, whether it's Brian Kemp, who's a Republican running for office, Catherine Harris, who ran the Bush campaign, why do we have partisan officials in charge of voting in America? This is like nuts. But whatever,
okay,
this is what we're stuck with. So you have to protect your own vote. I don't see it changing in California at all. The party is truly hostile to the 5 million voters who say, I want to vote in the Democratic primary, but I don't want to join the Democratic Party. Right. And so they're very hostile to that group. And frankly, if you really want to vote in the Democratic primary, your safest bet is simply to register as a Democrat.
Yes.
It doesn't require your Democratic vote, but it allows you a kind of easy way to get that full ballot.
Well, and I think you can actually make a case for closed primaries because, if somebody, being a member of the party and voting in the party's primaries it's like being a member of a club. I mean, you have some loyalty to that club. You've put some effort into that club, into that party. And I remember in Michigan back in the 60s when the Republicans crossed over in the Democratic primary and voted for George Wallace and sent him to the Democratic, he actually won Michigan in large part because of Republican crossover votes because Michigan had open primaries. And
well, let's put it this way. If you want to pick the Democratic Party's candidate, you should be in the Democratic Party. But that's a philosophical issue. The practical issue is that if you want to vote in the Democratic primary in California, forget the urban myth that it's easy to vote in that primary if you're an independent. Today or tomorrow, you're going to have to re-register as a Democrat or bring in that physical no party preference ballot. If you're saying, where is the presidential primary? By the way, in California, you do get the congressional races, the local races, the referenda, but millions, literally 3.7 million people were mailed ballots without the presidential candidates. Bring that into the polling station with the envelope. Say, I want, again, you have to have the magic word, crossover Democratic Party ballot, or re-register as a Democrat for the day.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like a plan. Greg Palast, gregpalast.com is the website, and I know you've got a little video about this up, don't you, over your website?
Yes, I have a video to show you how it's done and how to set your vote at gregpalast.com.
There you go, gregpalast.com, P-A-L-A-S-T. Greg, thanks for dropping by. It's always good talking with you.
You're the best, Tom. Thanks.
Back at you. We'll be back with, actually, I want to dig into the economy a little bit here, too, after the break. It's 14 minutes past the hour. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. And welcome back. Deborah in Denver, Colorado. Hey, Deborah, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching us on YouTube.
Hi.
What's up?
Hi, Tom. I am watching on YouTube. I love your show. I really love it. I've learned so much. Listen, I think that the Democrats are really banking on Joe Biden winning and his numbers going up, but he's not beating out Trump. And he doesn't.
Now, what do you base that on,
Deborah? This is not an attack. This is not an attack. I just want to. Okay.
But what are you basing that on? I mean, the numbers that I've seen, the national polling that I've seen, indicate that every Democrat beats Trump, and that the two Democrats who beat Trump most effectively are Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden in that order.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that his stats improved, because I was under the impression that he doesn't beat out Donald Trump.
Well, there were some individual state ones where he didn't. I don't recall which states they were, but if you look at the national numbers, that's what you see.
Well, my concern is that he's improving in the Republican states that's going to go Republican anyway. But what about the states that are Democratic that Bernie's winning? I'm just concerned that if we do have this corona outbreak, that with Bernie he has a transition that can help where people won't get bankrupt. Won't go bankrupt with the insurance. But I do want to mention that there is a video out by Matt Orfalia. It's called MLK and Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, and everybody should see this video, because it's like Bernie is Martin Luther King is talking about socialism and his idea of socialism. And it's like Bernie is taking that baton, saying, give me that baton, I'll take it to the finish line. And you don't have to be black to believe in the same things that Martin Luther King believes in. I would strongly recommend anybody to look at that video, because he's doing exactly that. And I really think that that the Dems are making a mistake, because I know Bernie can win. And it's not because I'm just simply a Bernie supporter. Looking at the numbers, he's winning the Democratic states, and he has a smooth transition. And I think that people need to take a serious look at that of what does Joe Biden offer me as an individual, and does he offer anything, and what does Bernie offer?
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. What do you think about this?
I at this point in time, I think that any Democrat will beat Donald Trump. But there's a lot of time to go, and there are a lot of events that have not yet come to pass that we need to be paying attention to. How this coronavirus thing is going to play out. What impact that's going to have on the election. What impact it's going to have on the economy. I mean, the conventional wisdom is if the economy goes down, then Trump loses badly. But if he can blame it on something specific, it's the virus, and the Democrats are making it worse, or something like that. It's really getting hard to predict things, Deborah. It really is, because there's just so much chaos in the system right now that we just need to hang on tight and get everybody we know to make sure that they're registered to vote and get them out there. Deborah, I got to run, but thank you for the call. We'll be back. I want to talk about the economy. We'll stick around. We'll get into this a little bit too. It's 18 minutes past the hour. All Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. We have a special video up over at thomhartmann.com for supporters of our program, and it's about how a letter that the IRS sent out to 3.9 million Americans saved 700 lives. And you're like, wait a minute, the IRS saved 700 lives? How did that happen? Well, it had to do with Obamacare, and it's a fascinating story. And it turns out that this analysis of this IRS mailing was actually the first time that the federal government has done a study that actually proved that people having access to health care produces fewer deaths. For every 1,648 people who got the letter, there was one fewer premature death. I'll explain the whole thing in the video. It's as I said, it's available over at thomhartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program, and it is really worth checking out. And it's a great ad, essentially, for a national health care system. To amend the Constitution. Check it out at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. I wanted to talk about the economy a little bit and what I see happening here. And this, by the way, we've already seen this happen now. We've seen it happen in China. If we simply look at what's going on, we look at China, look at northern Italy, look at South Korea, what we are seeing are economies essentially shutting down. There are some indications that China is starting to come back, that they may have this virus under control, but that said, it's China. And so they may be covering things up too. I mean, Judd Legum is talking about, over on Twitter actually, how the website, the federal website that is confirmed and presumptive positive cases in the United States, yesterday on March 1st, it showed that there had been a total of 472 people tested. And out of those, there are, 22 total cases that have been found, which seems to me to be around that 2% number. But that's only 472 cases. But when you look on the exact same website today, the number of total tested is gone. It's missing. And Judd is suggesting that he says, breaking, the CDC has stopped disclosing the number of Americans tested for coronavirus. On the left is the website, how it looked last night. On the right is what it looks like now with the testing information removed. This lack of testing is a scandal, and this is the cover-up. And I think Judd is absolutely right, and I am liking his tweet right now. But I mean, this is a big deal. So anyhow, back to the economy. I promised you a rant on the economy. As we see in northern Italy, for example, Venice has emptied out. It's just like, tourists are not coming. The restaurants are empty. The stores are empty. It's like things are closing down. Things are shutting down. The same thing is happening in Seoul, South Korea. And the same thing, I think, will be happening here as we start seeing larger numbers of this virus showing up. And it's going to. I mean, this is as communicable as the common cold. There are probably tens of thousands of people in the United States right now. I mean, if we've only tested 412 or 472 people, whatever the number was that I just had on Judd's website, here we go. Oops, there we go. We've tested 472 people as of yesterday. South Korea has tested, 80,000, something like that, some mind-boggling number. I mean, it's just huge numbers, and therefore they're finding thousands of cases. When we start doing large-scale testing, we're going to start finding large-scale clusters because, again, the vast majority of people, 80% of people who get this disease, either don't have any symptoms or they have symptoms that are so mild that they just think they have a cold. And so, anyway, as as people stop going out to restaurants and stop going to the movie theater and stop getting on airplanes, and we're already seeing this, conferences and conventions all around the country, all around the world are being canceled right now. I'm thinking, I've got my plane tickets to go to Milwaukee for the Democratic convention in June, I think it is, or May. Yeah, July, whenever it is, yeah. I've already got the tickets, but I'm thinking, do I really want to do this? And I'm guessing a lot of Americans are thinking that way. I mean, we've seen air traffic down in Asia so substantially that it's actually measurably reducing the amount of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. This is something that we all need to get ready for. And, I've been talking for years in this program about, how crashes happen and how fragile our economy is and how it's being held together basically with baling wire and bubble gum, particularly since 2008, but I would say in large part since 2000. And that, the steps that we need to be taking, don't take on more debt. Try to pay off whatever debt you have. Try to get financially stable and solid. I get it. Keep your job. Don't take risks right now. This is not a time to be risky with regard to economics, and you might want to seriously think about what's going on in your 401k. And I don't want to give investment advice. It very often works out badly when I try to do that. But Nouriel Roubini, the economist who was nicknamed Dr. Doom because back in 2007 he was saying, as I was saying, there is a crash coming. Look out. He believes that the spread of the coronavirus is going to tank the stock market, and he also says that this is going to cost Trump the 2020 election. And Nouriel Roubini, he says, the Democratic field is poor, but Trump is dead. He says, I live in New York City, and people there are hardly going to restaurants, cinemas, or theaters. If this comes, we are totally screwed. He says Trump is going to lose his talking point of the greatest economy ever. I guess the upside of this is that when economies are going into the tank, and we saw this, to some extent in 2008 when John McCain lost to Barack Obama. I mean, rather than continuing a Republican presidency, it was like, okay, we're gonna go into we're gonna choose a Democrat. So this could be the event, among other things. But get ready, prudently, thoughtfully. Don't panic. But the market is back up today. I don't think it's going to hold over a course of a few weeks. I just don't think it's going to hold, because this is how this has played out in 3 other countries that we can look at. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Your calls right after the break. Whatever's on your mind, give us a shout. Well, happy Monday. Another opportunity to help Free Speech TV stay on the air, keep this program here, keep this whole network going by calling 1-877-378-8669. Free Speech TV really does need your help. Of course, there's a lot of things you can do. You can tell all your friends about Free Speech TV. We get more people watching. We can get more people donating. We can shorten these fund drives. So that's an important thing you can do. And I've been on the road here with this book tour. And one of the things that has really impressed me is how many people come up to me and say, hey, I just started watching you on Free Speech TV in the last X months because my friend so-and-so told me to. And it's really cool. We need more of that. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, talk about us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, Instagram, whatever it may be. Because Free Speech TV is listener supported, viewer supported. It's you, literally, who keep this network on the air. and your $5 a month, $10 a month contributions, your commitments to a small monthly amount on a regular basis is the most important thing you can do to help Free Speech TV. And frankly, in my opinion, helping Free Speech TV is one of the most important things that you can do to help, resuscitate American politics. Frankly, I don't know how to say it other than that, just to resuscitate American politics. We have a political disaster going on in our country right now with this fellow in the White House, and the damage that's being done to the administration of justice, but also to basically all of the systems of governance. I mean, the Interior Department is gutted, the EPA is gutted, the two offices in the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of or the National Security Council that were responsible for taking care of us if there is a pandemic or epidemic disease were both shut down 2 years ago by Donald Trump. There's nobody in either of those positions. He puts Mike Pence, the guy who thinks the world is 6,000 years old, cancer doesn't cause smoking, and you can pray away the guy who doesn't believe in science, puts him in charge of our response to the coronavirus. And he was on the Sunday shows, and nobody even asked him about how his religious motivated, no, we're not going to do anything to help with the AIDS epidemic in Indiana back in 2000, actually caused Indiana to go from 20 cases to 200 cases of HIV. It's crazy. We need people who can actually, America needs a network that actually talks about what's going on. And that's what this is right here, Free Speech TV. And you can help. 877-378-8669. With a $20 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, proud student of Thom Hartmann University. Or the, just get out and vote the car magnet. It's like a bumper sticker to get out the vote. It says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, you get the Just Effing Vote canvas tote bag. With a $75 gift, you get the Tag You're It Thom Hartmann mug. With a $120 gift, which can be $10 a month for a year, you get my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, which should have been the Republican War on Voting because there's no Democratic War on Voting. With a $240 gift, we have a virtual meet and greet. No viruses. Seriously. You don't have to leave your home. We will meet on the interwebs. We'll meet on the internet and have a conversation. With a $300 gift, you get the Get Out the Vote pack. That's Free Speech TV host postcards to send to friends and family. The car magnet to get out the vote. The Just Effing Vote tote bag. And my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. That's with a $300 gift. With a $360 gift, you get all 3 Hidden History books autographed by the author. That's me. The Hidden History of the Guns in the Second Amendment, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and its Betrayal of America. And by the way, they're fixing to do even more. We'll talk about that on the air. And number 3, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. And with a $1,000 gift, come here to Portland, Oregon, and hang out with us, as long as you're not coughing, and we'll have a good time, and we'll go next door and have a nice meal. So those are the premiums, the Free Speech TV premiums. But the really important thing is the importance of having a television network that tells the truth, where you get, the Walter Cronkite of this generation, Amy Goodman, here on Free Speech TV. You get an extraordinary comedian and political commentary, Stephanie Miller, who really understands politics. I mean, her dad ran for vice president with Barry Goldwater back in 1964. She knows what she's talking about. You get this program, which I hope is of value to you. David Pakman, Sonali. I mean, there is such great programming on this network that we just have to keep it going. I mean, there's no other way to say it. We have to keep this network going. And that happens when you call 877-378-8669 or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution online. It's pretty important stuff. I can't overstate how important it is. I don't think that, I'm not an official historian, but I'm a pretty good student of history. And I honestly believe we've never seen anything like this before. We've got to call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. Coming up this week on the Science Revolution, is the coronavirus about to show us the cost of not having Medicare for all? Former health insurance executive Wendell Potter, public health professor at George Washington University Medical School Dr. Lena Wen, and author of The Coming Plague, Lori Garrett, all join me for the most up-to-date information on the now pandemic coronavirus. Don't miss it, and check it out wherever fine podcasts are available. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. You know, we've been through public health crises before. We had the H1N1 flu in 2009. We had SARS back in 2003. It's been more than a decade, but we went through these things that actually had at least a small but measurable impact on the economy. And Elizabeth Warren has now rolled out a plan to deal with the coronavirus. This is such straightforward, simple, common sense stuff that it's kind of mind-numbing that the Trump administration is not even talking about this kind of stuff. We saw Mike Pence doing the weekend shows, basically saying the Democrats are trying to hype this, and we've got this under control and all this kind of nonsense. But basically what Elizabeth Warren is proposing, and this is a detailed plan. She's got a plan for everything. I mean, it reduces everything to a solid plan. Key actions would include making tests and treatments free to anybody who wants them or needs them, providing paid leave to people who must miss work or who must care for relatives who may have this, might be in quarantine, and propping up the economy with $400 billion in new government spending to keep the economy from collapsing. The news is already filled with stories like this guy in Miami who got this surprise bill. He had either been to a country where the coronavirus was, or he lived with somebody. We talked about it last week, and he had a reason to be concerned, and he had a cough. He had the symptoms. He had a fever and a cough, and so he went to a local hospital and said, "I think I might have been exposed to the coronavirus, and would you please test me?" And they said, "Sure." And they tested him, and the test came back negative. And he gets home and he gets a bill in the mail for $3,275. So what Warren's plan would do is basically make it a law that private insurance companies have to pay for coronavirus testing with no out-of-pocket costs and no copays. And as for the vaccine, Elizabeth Warren is suggesting that the government should provide a guarantee bulk purchases in order to encourage mass production, and make sure that the vaccines are available at no cost. And if after a vaccine is developed, and I'm reading this from a piece in today's Huffington Post, if after the vaccine is developed, a private manufacturer charges, quote, an outrageous price, Warren said, the government should consider granting the production license to other manufacturers, which, by the way, is something that we did during the anthrax scare of 2001. So she also wants to create an emergency paid leave program under which anybody who has to miss work because they have the coronavirus or because they have to care for somebody with the coronavirus would get money to replace the lost wages. Campaign officials said that the emergency paid leave legislation initiative could operate through existing unemployment insurance programs. So this is public health. This would reduce the spread of the virus by keeping people at home. We're I believe the only developed country in the world that does not have paid sick leave, and it would it would make it a whole lot easier for a whole lot of people to get tested, especially now that the federal government is no longer publishing numbers about how many people they are testing. I mean, that's crazy. Speaking of Elizabeth Warren, she created, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, this agency inside our federal government that looks out for you. I mean, the metaphor that she uses is, if your toaster catches on fire, there's an agency that makes sure that your toaster manufacturer doesn't make a defective toaster. If your car, catches on fire, or if a car is made that easily, the old Pinto thing, there's a federal agency that deals with that. Well, there was no federal agency that dealt with if your bank crashes or if your bank screws you. And so she helped create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it has recovered billions of dollars of money that have been basically stolen from, average Americans, people like you and me, by big banks and other financial institutions. And lo and behold, the right-wingers, the Republicans, are taking this to court. And in fact, it's going to be tested tomorrow. The Supreme Court will hear oral arguments tomorrow morning on the constitutionality of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau's leadership structure. And Nick Simpson from the Consumer Bankers Association just sent along the amicus brief in this constitutionality case. The Washington Post is writing about it also. Renee Merle, Elizabeth Warren wanted blood and teeth left on the floor in CFPB fights. Now it faces the U.S. Supreme Court. And so sure enough, here we are. Anyhow, let's pick up some of your phone calls here. Jennifer in Stillwater, Minnesota. Hey, Jennifer, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, Mick Mulvaney already gutted the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau, so while it was a great idea...
well, he slowed it down a lot, yes.
Yeah, and of course, Mitch McConnell and them refused to allow Elizabeth Warren to ever head her own agency.
Yep.
So that's why she then ran for Senate. So she, too, will be stopped by the Republicans, just like they always say, Bernie can't get anything done because he might be stopped by Republicans. Well, yeah, they stopped... Obama, and they stopped Warren, they stopped a lot of people.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to say that two things, that we have something called the Alex Smith Emergency Insulin Bill that we've been arguing about since 2017 when Alex Smith died. He was a 26-year-old, worked full-time, 26-year-old young man in Minneapolis who could not afford he was born with type 1 diabetes, and his insulin bill was $1,300 per month.
Wow.
And he could not afford that and his rent, so he had to ration his insulin, and he died. And then about a year later, another young man also died. And in Minnesota, we have fully funded Obamacare health exchange. Mm-hmm. We have, we have fully funded Medicaid, but Alec did not qualify because he worked full-time, but he could not afford his insulin, and he's dead. And another person is dead. So, it's not okay, that Romney Care, Heritage Care, Obamacare, it's not covering people. And that's even before we have coronavirus. Well, so nothing that we have is okay. And it's not okay that young Americans are dying who work full time.
Well, and on top of that, do you know the name of the guy who, when he was head of Eli Lilly, oversaw the doubling of insulin prices in the United States?
Exactly.
Alex Azar. He's the head of HHS right now. That was what he did before he came into HHS. He doubled the price of insulin at Eli Lilly.
Right. So we need Medicare for all. We need single payer, and we need it now. Yeah. Also, I just wanted, and this is Minnesota, by the way. We're not a Republican state. We haven't voted Republican since 1972. Okay. So also, I wanted to say to Malcolm Nance and the McCarthyism, the red baiting that's going on against Bernie, that South Carolina just proved you wrong, because Bernie lost in a landslide in a state that is a red state. It's always won by the Republicans, and every one of those Republicans had nothing to do on Saturday. They certainly could have followed the Russians, and Putin, and gone over and voted for Bernie. It's an open primary state. All the Democratic, the DNC, all the Democratic people, establishment types have been claiming that, the Russians want Bernie to win, and so they're going to have all the Republican voters cross over and vote for Bernie, and because Trump will immediately destroy Bernie and beat Bernie. So you can't vote for Bernie because Trump will beat him. So South Carolina just blew that theory right out of the water, because Bernie lost in a landslide, just like he did in 2016, because none of these Russian Republicans voted for him. They all just went golfing.
Well, you could even, if you want to go down that conspiracy rabbit hole, you could even suggest that those Republicans were voting for Joe Biden because the whole Burisma Hunter Biden thing, they think will actually give them the ability to say, yeah, Trump's a little corrupt, but so is Joe Biden. So, just stay with what you've got. And
clearly they didn't. Clearly they did not vote for Bernie.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well said. Jennifer, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Anthony in Detroit. Hey, Anthony, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing? Just want to preface my statement on the commentary of the state of the race right now by saying any Democrat would be better for us in terms of emergency management and our standing in the world and what have you. That being said, personally, I'm just feeling reservations about Joe Biden for his policy proposals, of which I'm not sure what any of them are. And honestly, I don't think his fitness for office is being examined closely enough. I think it's really serious, in my opinion.
Joe has not done great in the debates, but I don't think that he's incompetent or unfit. I mean, what are you talking about?
I'm really not trying to be rude, but just the age and the slips of the,
part of that is that he's been a lifelong stutterer, and so he catches himself. But I get that. But even if Ronald Reagan was in full blown Alzheimer's the last 2 years of his presidency. A friend of mine was the court reporter who did the deposition on Iran-Contra in 87, I guess it was. And Reagan over 100 times said, I don't remember, and literally didn't. I mean, there were times when he wasn't even sure what room he was in or why he was in the room, and he was president of the United States. So, to the extent that Joe might be slipping a little bit in his 70s, I'm not. I'll take that over Donald Trump any day of the week, Anthony. I'm just, that is not freaking me out. What concerns me is that I don't think that there's as much passion for Joe Biden on the ground as there is for Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. Frankly, I think a genuinely progressive candidate will bring out huge numbers of people, whereas, a kind of same old Democrat might not. But on the other hand, no matter who the Democratic candidate is, they're up against Trump. And that's going to be something that's going to turn a lot of people out, too.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
So I really do believe whoever is the Democratic nominee, in all probability, is going to win this election, unless there is some sort of terrible black swan event like Trump declares war on Iran. And welcome back. Orion in Seattle. Hey, Orion, what's up? What's on your mind today?
Oh, hi. I have wanted to call you for a long time about making an ad that'll show Trump dancing with Epstein at Mar-a-Lago and partying with the Saudis, but I'll call again at a later date. Because I received my W-2. It shows that my employer pays $4,500 a year for my health insurance, and I have no dependents, and now times 10 years, that's going to be $45,000.
Right.
After 20 years, that'll be $90,000. After 40 years, that's $180,000 out of my check, with no guarantee against bankruptcy. And I'm so angry, I'm furious, and I don't want a politician who understands how I feel. I want someone who feels how I feel.
Right.
Like Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
That's why I support Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. Well, and Bernie is going head on this thing and has, his entire career. And that's a good thing. I think it is a good thing, and I think he will get people out there. But I've been saying that for a long, long time. What was your ad? Your proposed ad, Orion?
It's to show Trump dancing with Epstein, partying with Assad. Like I said,
Trump dancing with Assad. You mean the head of Syria?
No, in Saudi Arabia.
Mohammed bin Salman, Mr. Bonesaw.
Yeah, remember the sword dance?
Oh, yeah.
So he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of danced a little bit with Epstein for a second on TV, and they got to use that against him. And then they got to show, they got to go interview, they got to show how he hired undocumented and H-1Bs, and how he tried to give nuclear technology to the Saudis. To Mohammed bin Salman,
right?
And they should go and interview some of his undocumented workers. Perhaps some of them went to the emergency room.
Well, some of them have gone on the record and have been interviewed in the media, and
perhaps, yes, sir.
Yeah, and those stories are out there, and in fact, the ones that he fired from his winery, he didn't fire them until after the grape picking season was all over.
Yes,
then it was convenient to fire them.
Perhaps they've been to the emergency room, which, that's a major contradiction that that's a concern of the conservatives that undocumented will go to emergency rooms.
Right.
So, you got to get the thing about Trump trying to give them nuclear technology, though.
Yeah. There is such a long list. I mean, we need to be compiling this list, and but this is part of the problem. Is we're kind of overwhelmed because the way that Republicans, when they win elections, typically do it is by taking 1, 2, or 3, no more than 3 topics and just pounding on them. Hillary's emails, Benghazi. Hillary's emails, Benghazi. Neither one were a thing. I mean, they were both phony baloney things, but they pounded on them over and over and over again. And I think it needs to be Trump is corrupt. Trump is in the pocket of foreign governments and foreign oligarchs and foreign billionaires, and just nail that that corruption, or paint him with that corruption, I guess is a better metaphor. Ryan, thanks for the call. It's great to hear from you, and thanks for listening to us there in Seattle. It's 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stick around. Hey, did you know that Hillary Clinton actually won Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida in the 2016 election? It's on page 92 of my new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Denise in Buffalo, New York. Hey, Denise, thanks for listening to Sirius XM. What's on your mind today?
Oh, thanks for having me. Hey, I heard somebody call in, and you had mentioned, too, that the CDC is not only taking down information. I just want to point out to you and to your listeners that not only are they taking down information, but their numbers are drastically different from what you will get from other resources.
For example?
I'm a writer and a researcher, and the website that we use for our research in helping people through this emerging virus is from Johns Hopkins. It's a pretty long, it's a gnarly URL. It's not friendly at all because people in the medical industry don't put up friendly URLs. But here it is: systems.jhu.edu. All right, you're going to go there. You're going to see a pop-up screen that helps you track COVID. And then just so that you know, it is not 2% death rate. It's 3.4, almost 3.5. This website's going to blow your mind.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. Have fun.
Now, again, when we say total confirmed, this is tested and confirmed. Yeah, I get that. But when you look, when you scroll way down and you look at the United States, it's like we've only tested, according to the CDC yesterday, as of yesterday, we've tested 472 people or something like that. And the total recovered is fascinating. 33,000 people have recovered in Hubei in mainland China. Yes. So that's good news.
Well, that is good news, but it does clearly show you that the death rate is much closer to 4%. Everybody, every CNN, MSNBC, they're all saying under 2%. That is just not factual information. Our research, we use, these are the websites that the medical professionals are using. Nobody is going to the CDC website for any information.
Okay, here, John Hopkins' website is saying that there's a total confirmed of roughly 90,000, 89,254. And you've got total deaths of 3,000. So 3,000 to 100,000 would be 3%. So that's not 4%, but it's a little over 3%.
No, 3.4. Yeah,
3.4%. Yeah.
Right, and it obviously it changes on a daily basis. This math, when we use it for our research.
But hang on just a second, just to toss another thing in here that may suggest that the number actually the fatality rate is actually lower than what you're suggesting. Look at Iran, for example. Iran has 54 deaths and only 978 diagnosed cases. Right. That's well over that's over 5%, which tells me not that the disease is more deadly in Iran, but that they're not testing as many people in Iran. They're only looking at the people who are really, really sick. And I'm guessing that's probably happening, certainly in the United States, with a total confirmed of 86. That's probably happening in a lot of places that we just really, I'm guessing the death rate is probably closer to 1% because I'm guessing that 70-80% of the people who, outside of the known epidemic areas like in Hubei, that most of these people are never being tested because they're not sufficiently symptomatic.
Well, I don't know that would make it lower. I think the fact that people aren't being tested might even make it higher.
Well, no, the death rates are known. If somebody dies, you know that they're dead. But if somebody has the disease and they're not tested, they don't show up in the tested statistics. And your death rate is, as a percentage, is the number of deaths divided into the number of confirmed cases, which is number tested. Right. So if we're not testing as many people, I mean, South Korea has 4,300 confirmed cases because they're doing so many tests. But if you look at the South Korean deaths, it's only 26. So that's that's 2%.
I can only imagine there are thousands of people also right now dying of the flu, and they're not. Maybe it's COVID-19. Who knows? You never know. Yeah, anyway, I just wanted to bring to your attention.
Well, thank you for that.
The CDC.org. Please.
Yeah.
Bookmark this page, use it, watch the numbers grow. Over, the past 4 weeks that we've been using this for our research, there hasn't even been a dot in the U.S. So now look at it.
Yeah. And the website, once again, is systems.jhu, as in Johns Hopkins University, .edu. Systems.jhu.edu.
Very good.
And then click on
have fun with that one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it, Denise. Thank you for the information, and that was a great one. Thank you.
All right.
Steve in Topanga, California. Hey, Steve, we got a little less than a minute. You got a quick point you want to make?
Yeah, I think that we need to protect our whistleblowers because, all these issues that are coming up, we could get to the bottom of it if we protected our whistleblowers. And a lot of times they get ratted out by IGs and they get identified when they want to remain anonymous. And Tom Mueller's book, Crisis of Conscience, Whistleblowing in the Age of Fraud, is just an amazing read. Anyway, this is how the people that are inside that are career guys, this is what they do, and they can tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I'm with you. Thank you, Steve. I'm with you. Right. Our whistleblowers, this is actually a really, really big deal because the Trump administration has declared war on whistleblowers. And it will have a chilling effect across our government, and that's not a good and healthy thing. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. So please get out there, get active, tag you're it, and tell your friends how to find progressive media. Let's build our base here, and let's wake more people up. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
We say fight back!
Bye.